Greetings, this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today we resume our book study of The Magician, His Training and Work by W.E. Butler. We left off on chapter 6 and we continue with chapter 7. So, get ready. If you got this text, go ahead and crack it open. If not, well, follow along as we go. You know how we do it. Welcome to everybody present. Peace, Alicia M. Greetings. ACW, peace and greetings. Welcome. The Magical Magician, peace. Welcome. The Mental Goddess, peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. Kevin Wise, peace, my brother. Sunshine Chick, always great to see you. Greetings, peace. Ashley B, welcome, welcome. Did you finish that painting yet? All right, so let's do it. Let's get cracking. Crack-a-lackin'. Tian Pomeroy, peace, greetings, welcome. Hope you're having a great evening. Hakeem Lamidi, peace, peace. Hermetica Obscura, peace and greetings. Rayshawn Justice, peace, peace. Rayshawn Justice says, peace and chaos. I have this in PDF form. Awesome, awesome. Follow along. Lanny Alderdice, peace and greetings. Feeling good, thank you very much. WVT, welcome, welcome, my friend, peace. All right, so let's get into the lesson, the teaching, the training. As Lanny Alderdice says, greetings to the Ashe to the Order of the Phoenix, Ashe to the Order of the Unicorn. Let's do it. Let's do it. Son of Universe Daoud, peace. Go ahead and hit the like button if you're enjoying this book study. And if not, hit the like button when you do start to enjoy it. All right. Chapter 7, Visualization and Audition. So we're talking about seeing and hearing. For successful magical work, it is absolutely essential that the operator should be able to build up mental images, since, as we've seen, the forces of the astral light are directed and controlled by such mental images. It is therefore evident that the would-be magician must gain proficiency in his image building if he is to do any effective work. Like what I've been saying lately, it is necessary to get your psychic ability up, fortified, strengthened, if you are to have consistent, successful results. That's what I've been saying, right? Get your psychic ability up. Look what he says here, the astral light, right? The forces of the astral plane are directed and controlled by the mental images that you should be able to build up, right? He said it's essential. He also said that the would-be magician must gain proficiency in image building if he is to do any effective work. That means that there is ineffective work. But if you want to do effective work, you got to build up your image building faculties, your psychic ability. See, I wasn't just making that up. There are several points to be remembered when one is beginning to train the mind along these lines. One, and probably the most important of them all, is that the mind strongly opposes any attempt to train it and will resort to the strangest of tricks in order to prevent its owner in any way attempting to do so. These psychological tricks vary from a simple forgetting to do the exercise to a very definite feeling of headache, palpitation, and general malaise. The mind judges, and usually quite correctly, that any adverse physical symptoms will alarm us and so tend to make us drop our training. How many people dropped your training or dropped your practice because you had a headache or you had some other unease when you tried to do your work? He says the mind judges, and usually quite correctly, that any adverse physical symptoms will alarm us and so tend to make us drop our training. The reason for this trait of the mind is simply that the mind is a creature of habit. And once certain patterns have been established within it, it tends to work exclusively along those lines. Any new suggestions which tend to break up the existing state of things arouse strong subconscious opposition. Any attempt to break pattern will cause your subconscious mind to resist, right? But if the effort is persevered in, there comes a time when the new pattern is accepted, and henceforth it will be as difficult for the person concerned to revert to the earlier pattern as it was for him to adopt the later one. You get that? So essentially, as your normal state, undisciplined and not really practicing any kind of magic, you've developed habits. Right now, you've already got habits that will cause you to resist sitting down, studying, practicing, doing your meditation, doing your mantras and all that stuff. You'll resist all that until you force a new habit by doing this stuff repeatedly. And eventually, after doing it and the new habit forms, it'll actually be difficult to break that habit. And a lot of you have already felt this. Hell, all of us have felt it. You know, like once you really start digging into this information and this knowledge, it becomes difficult to do some of the stuff you used to do, like sit in front of the TV all day, or just stay on the phone talking all day long, or needing to like go out every weekend just to feel like you're doing something. Like a lot of those things start to lose their flavor once you start to experience some of this real knowledge, right? And it becomes difficult to go back to those things because you know better. Likewise, ZJ, peace. Richard Tracy, peace. Welcome, welcome, my friend. How then may we best go to work with this training? Modern psychologists tell us that it is impossible to stop the flow of the conscious mental images in the waking consciousness and still remain awake and conscious, right? Modern psychologists tell us that it's impossible to stop the flow of conscious mental images in the waking consciousness while you're awake and still remain awake and conscious. But the yogis say it is possible to be fully awake and at the same time to keep the mind perfectly blank. This for them is a matter of personal experience. In practice, one finds it is possible to keep the mind clear of images, yet alert and ready to act. But in order to do this, the mind must be trained, and the statement of the psychologists omits this consideration. For success in this, as in all magical work, it is essential that we keep ourselves firmly anchored on the objective levels, and this is best done by building images which are mental pictures of things around us. And only when considerable proficiency has been gained should abstract and purely mental concepts be visualized. Natural Mystic, peace. Cecile Wooden, peace. Garrett Patterson, peace. Welcome. All right, let's get into it. Visualization and audition. Yantra and mantra, right? There are two different methods of mental form building, and each complements the other. So the path of true wisdom in these matters lies midway between them. Both methods should be carefully and persistently worked with, and it will be found that they both have their justification, so that one is hindered by the absence of the other. In one case, the experimenter trains the mind to construct some image, not too simple, and such construction is carefully carried out. We may term this method the creation of images. The reason why the image should not be too simple is that the mind requires variety and will soon tire of a simple picture and tend to slip away from it. In the second case, the mind is held by the will in a quiet and passive condition, and the images are allowed to rise in consciousness. This method may be termed the evocation of images, right? So stop right here. We've got two different methods that he's talking about here, two different methods. One method is active, and it is actively creating images, right? Images that aren't too simple. The other method is passive and allowing images to rise to the conscious mind, okay? So you got two different methods here. Two different methods here. Now, the impressions received from the five physical senses provide excellent material for the work, and by the very fact that they are derived from the physical plane, they tend to keep the mind in touch with the objective realities of physical life. Although we have only referred in the title to two of the five, the visual and audible images, the images from all the senses must be worked upon, all right? All five senses. The following exercises along the two lines already indicated will show how the training works, and any amount of similar exercises can be devised by the experimenter himself. It is well to remember that the pictures seen when we are just falling asleep or when we are just awakening are both of the images rising type, known to psychologists as the hypnopompic and the hypnagogic images. When the two types of exercise have been practiced for a little time, it will be found that there is a very real difference between them. Very real difference between them. So what is he talking about? The active process of creating images and the passive process of allowing images to rise. He says when you practice these for a little while, you'll start to find that there's very real difference between them. The development of the power of visualization along the lines of the image arising is greatly facilitated by the exercises here given, but it must be borne in mind that the relationship between the conscious and subconscious levels of the mind when performing these exercises must be that the two principles in the tarot card, the Lovers, i.e., one of happy cooperation, not an attempt to bully the subconscious into obedience. So you get that? What he's talking about here is these two processes of visualization. One is active, one is passive. And he's saying that yes, there is a difference between the two. And once you exercise the practices together, you'll find that it is a process of happy cooperation, like the Lover's card, not trying to dominate and bully and force the subconscious. It should be a cooperation, right? Peace, Kevros SS God. Kevros says, I guess it was that cosmic call. I was watching an ad of a little girl riding an electric unicorn, 777. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Best believe I've been practicing my cyclomancy. Best believe. just like I was back in 2017 when I first started working with the Goetia. More on that later. So, cooperation. In this connection, the remarks of a writer on alchemy are worth remembering. He says, and he is speaking of one aspect of the subconscious, she yields to nothing but love. She yields to nothing but love. In the tarot card above mentioned, the woman looks to the angel above, whilst the man, representing the conscious level of the mind, looks at the woman, perceiving in her, as in a mirror, the angel she perceives directly. You ever think about that when considering the images of these cards? You know, the Lover's card isn't just about, you know, you finding a new partner. Masculine in the occult usually represents the conscious mind, and feminine usually represents the subconscious mind, right? Consciousness and matter. Notice what he pointed out. He said that the woman is looking directly at the angel, right? She's looking directly at the angel. The man is looking directly at the woman. You see that? He says that the man represents the conscious level of the mind, and he's looking at the woman, perceiving her as in a mirror, right? The angel that she perceives directly. In other words, he is seeing the angel reflected in her, right? He is seeing the divinity reflected in her. The conscious mind looks into the subconscious mind, which is the reflection of the superconscious mind. You get that? So it's not about finding a new lover. This is about the marriage and the unity of the different levels of being. Cool stuff, huh? Cool stuff. Some modern systems of concentration and visualization do try to control the subconscious by force, but the results they obtain are negligible. Since, however, the subconscious levels are affected by the unseen psychic and psychological tides of the universe, tides which work through the magnetic sphere of the earth, and y'all know what those tides are. We call that astrology, right? We call that astrology. Since, however, the subconscious levels are affected by the unseen psychic and psychological tides of the universe, tides which work through the magnetic sphere of the earth, it will be found in practice that there are times when it is far easier to establish the necessary contact between the conscious and the subconscious levels than at others. And every apprentice to the magical art should carefully note that these times, every apprentice to the magical art should carefully note these times and draw up a chart of their fluctuations. What did he say here? He said it will be found in practice when you're actually doing this work. It will be found in practice that there are times when it is far easier to establish necessary contact between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. There's times when it's easier, right, than others. And every apprentice to the magical art should carefully note these times and draw up a chart of their fluctuations. This is why it's important to take notes on your progress and what you're doing in your magic, right? All of us have heard a teacher worth his merit telling us, or worth her merit, telling us that you got to take notes. And if you're like me, you're usually like, oh, I don't need to take notes, I'll just remember it. But it's not just about remembering. It's about finding patterns. That's why you take notes in your magical practice. And one of the patterns that, if you want successful magic repeatedly, one of the patterns that you must find is your personal pattern of when you're more effective, when things are easier than others, right? There are times in the day, times in the week, times in the month, and times in, whatever zodiac sign we're in, or whatever lunar phase we're in, where you can tap in without any type of effort, right? I mean, all of you here watching this have had times where it doesn't take anything for you to just tap in, for you to get a vision, for you to start, do your synchronicities or to manifest something. Sometimes it's way easier than others. If you are taking notes, you're going to find a correlation. This is why whenever I take notes, even if I'm just reading and I want to write notes from the book, I always write in the upper right hand corner what day it is, what time it is, so that if in the future I come back and I start to recognize a pattern, I'll look at the date and the time and I'll see what the astrological sign is. Where was the sun? Where was the moon? What else was in play in the stars? And I'll look and see if that has an influence. I mean, you'll notice that there are certain times of the day recurring repeatedly that you have to use the bathroom, that you get hungry, right? That you have other feelings that may or may not arise. Noticing these patterns is the way to mastering the matrix. There's a reason why they say that October 31st is a time where the veil is thin, right? We're still in that time frame where the veil is thin. Well, that's one time of the year, most certainly, where whatever the sun's got going on makes it easier for most people to tap in. Get what I'm saying? Just like what Natural Mystic says, right? Self-conscious, know thyself. Thank you. Exactly. This is part of know thyself. You don't know thyself from a book. You know thyself from paying attention to yourself. Now, the book will help show you what to pay attention to, right? So I'm not saying don't read. What I'm saying is know thyself. No matter what you read, and no matter what spell you do off of TikTok, you must pay attention to the patterns within yourself. You got to do that. Got to do that. Richard Tracy says, yes, agreed. Our biological clock's chronotype does change in various degrees every 7 years, thus directly affecting our magic. Boom. Boom. Then, by comparing his chart with objective data, he will find that the positions of the planets and the moon seem to be linked with certain phases of the subconscious life. There it is. If this work is done steadily and conscientiously, the dry periods when work with the images appears almost impossible may be checked and provided against, right? We've all got dry periods. Hell, I got dry periods. I just came out of a dry period, right? So it doesn't matter how advanced you think you are, you're going to go through these cycles. So if you can prepare for the cycles and know them in advance, number one, you're not going to beat yourself up and say, oh no, I lost it all. You're going to understand that there's rises and falls. Even the moon goes completely black and completely full. Even the sun has phases: winter, spring, summer, fall, right? And 3 parts within each of those. So you too, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, you're going to have a bright period and a dark period. This is what it means to even exist in this plane. But you got to know the pattern. It is foolish to endeavor to swim against the tide, though sometimes this must be done deliberately in order to develop independence of action. And this is for the advanced occultist right here. He says it is foolish to endeavor to swim against the tide, though sometimes this must be done deliberately in order to develop independence of action. And this comes from, I think, 2 live streams ago. If it wasn't my last one, 2 live streams ago, where I was talking about how when a person is unconscious, when a person is ruled by the hive mind, which is most everybody, when a person is ruled by the hive mind, you're going with the flow of the collective unconscious, right? Right? If everybody's twerking, then you're twerking. If everybody's investing in crypto, then you're investing in crypto. There's a certain hive mind that pushes all of manifestation in a certain direction. And it's good to know these tides. And what's also good, like I said, this is for the advanced occultist, when you've learned yourself and your patterns, now you can start to push out of that hive mind and move closer to the soul. You can start to move closer to the true light. Now, the true light flows at a different rhythm than the hive mind. And if you're not ready to swim against the tide of the hive mind, there will be clashes, there will be battles and fights and all that stuff. But in truth, it's not a battle, it's not a fight, it's not a clash. It's just different patterns and learning how to dance and flow with them. All right? Right. Ashley B says law of rhythm. Absolutely. Somebody knows their Cabalion. Somebody knows their Cabalion. Excellent. The wise man rules his stars. The fool obeys them. That's a good quote right there. You might need to write that down. Write that down and post that on Instagram. The wise man rules his stars. The fool obeys them. This is true. But in this, as in all occult work, discrimination is the first virtue. The real virtue is to know when and how to act or refrain from action. The real virtue is to know when and how to act or refrain from action. But for the beginner, it is well if he observes the set of the tides and works accordingly. At a later date, he can essay the deeper waters and swim against the tides if needs be. The regular and conscientious performance of allowing the images to rise will tend to establish a channel by which many mental conflicts which were hitherto held in the unconscious may come up into the daylight of the conscious mind. What did he just say? He just said that by allowing yourself to do the passive visualization and to let these images float to the top, by doing that, you are establishing a channel which can allow unconscious conflicts to rise up and be neutralized. See, if you don't ever do this, those unconscious conflicts that you most certainly have, right, we call them the shadow work, those unconscious conflicts that you have are going to always be bubbling under the surface, compelling you to do things, the hive mind. So again, all this, as we go through this, I'm telling you, it's so important to understand that developing your psychic ability is crucial to your success. Crucial. Just Ridiculing Curriculum says, would channeling art or creativity be magic? Absolutely, because if you're channeling, that's the passive version of what we're talking about. You're allowing the subconscious, the unconscious, to rise to the surface, and you're doing something with it, right? You're applying it, you're giving it form, giving it shape, so it's no longer unconscious. It is now conscious, right? If you sit back and you channel music and you create a song out of it, that was energy that you converted into something else. So it's no longer bubbling under the surface. Yeah, for sure. C Main, peace. The regular, wait, where are we at? Yeah, so it establishes a channel by which many mental conflicts which were hitherto held in the unconscious may come up into the daylight of the conscious mind. This is all to the good, for it enables the self-consciousness to deal with such repressions, to break them down, and to restore the locked-up psychic energy which ensouls them back to the general river of energy, thus increasing the available force of the individual. So in doing that, in doing your shadow work, in allowing these unconscious images to rise to the surface, you are enabling yourself to deal with those unconscious struggles. You're breaking them down, and when you break down those unconscious boogeymen, those shadows, those things that haunt you, when you break them down, you'll find that they are actually powered by life force. They're brought to life by your own life force. So when you dissolve them, guess what? You return that life force back to where it belongs. You free up some of your... You ever had a computer and you had like way too many apps and windows open and programs? You got 3 games open, Internet Explorer, and all this other stuff running, and the computer starts to go slow and it's bogged down, right? Well, you're not going to be able to do much. You got Photoshop open, you got this program open, you got too much RAM being utilized, and you're not able to get much done. Your computer's running slow. What do you have to do? You pretty much have to cut your computer off and restart it. Close all those programs out. And once you do that, the RAM is freed up. Now your computer's running smoothly. Same thing is happening here. If you got a bunch of shadows, if you got a bunch of unconscious things that are still pulling at you, this might be part of the reason why you're not seeing as much success as you'd like to see. Because you constantly, quote unquote, battling demons. You're constantly, quote unquote, wrestling with shadows. Does that make sense? There is, in magical work, an operation known as exorcism, whereby evil spirits are driven out of the individual or place infested by them. The Christian Church, in its older branches, also practices such exorcism, as also do many spiritualists. But whether it be the magician or priest or leader of a spiritualist rescue circle, one thing must be done if the exorcism is to be effective. The spirit to be exorcised must first be brought into material conditions. You see that? The spirit must first be brought into material conditions as fully as possible. It is not possible to exorcise a spirit who isn't there. So evocation must always precede exorcism. Evocation must always precede exorcism. This is also why working with the Goetia can be an excellent form of shadow work. Or evoking any spirit, really, can be an excellent form of shadow work. Excellent form of shadow work. Anna Molly, peace, welcome. Okay. Now, the practice of allowing the images to rise does mean that the repressed complexes, which are semi-independent mental groups, and may therefore be legitimately personified as spirits, are evoked and begin to rise. And at first it seems likely that the waking consciousness may be drowned in the rising subconscious sea. At a later date, such a submergence, but a willed submergence of the flyer, i.e. the waking consciousness, and the sea, or subconsciousness, must be attempted. But at the commencement of the exercise, this must not be done, as it usually leads to a form of trance, which is not in itself productive of anything worthwhile. See, I had to learn that the hard way. Once I figured out how to really open my subconscious mind so that it starts to rise and flood the conscious mind, you'll find that while it is cool, it is a trance, one of the main things that happens is that time speeds by so fast, and you realize that you're really not getting much done. So, like with all rituals, there's got to be a beginning and an end, and a purpose for it. Don't do any of this stuff just to see if you can do it, or just because. There's got to be an intention buried within your practice. But like he said, he was talking about exorcism here. He said that the process of allowing the images to rise, it does mean that the repressed complexes, which are semi-independent, they're semi-independent mental groups, right? So these repressed complexes are semi-independent mental groups because they're powered by your life force. They're fragments of yourself. They're parts of you. But they're semi-independent because they've been fractionated, right? And they therefore may be legitimately personified as spirits. Yes, those parts of your shadow are spirits, y'all. This is what leads a lot of people to say, oh well, the Goetia are just parts of your subconscious mind, right? That's why a lot of people say that. They might not understand it, but this is why. Because those parts of your subconscious mind are parts of you that were fractionated and are semi-independent, and they are spirits. Now, they, like other elementals, they might fit into a mold or a shape or a deific mask, as Michael W. Ford calls them. They might fit into a mask. That's why I said before in previous live streams, most people who work with spirits or deities, they're working with elementals who are wearing the mask of gods. Like, all this starts to come together. What Manly P. Hall was talking about, what W.E. Butler was talking about, it starts to all come together. But what he's saying here, they might legitimately be personified as spirits, and they're evoked. They begin to rise, and at first it seems likely that the waking consciousness may be drowned in the rising subconscious sea. Right? So shadow work, and it can produce a certain kind of trance, but you have to have some type of intention while you're doing this. Notes should be kept of the complexes which arise during the period when we are doing these exercises. And it must be remembered that as the psychic energy which was locked up in those complexes is released, as the psychic energy which is locked up in those complexes is released, there will be some pretty violent emotional fluctuations taking place in the consciousness. Now, when he says that, it doesn't mean like you're going to have a violent episode, you're going to be punching and lashing out, breaking stuff. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that the change might be drastic. You might suddenly feel, like, so you might tap into a repressed, depressed memory or some thought form that was created while you were depressed or hurt. Well, if you evoke that spirit, of course, you're liable to go back into that state. It only makes sense. It could be anger. It could be depression. It could be many different things. Maybe you have trauma for doing something wrong and you feel guilt about it, right? And you've been ignoring it and keeping it in the swept under the rug. Well, maybe after doing shadow work and you start to bring it up, you'll feel that stuff again, right? So he says there will be some pretty violent emotional fluctuations taking place in the consciousness. This phase, which is a definite stage on the path of self-knowledge, must always be expected and arrangements made to deal with it. It is the period when the dross and scum mentioned by the alchemists begins to rise to the surface. Right? So if anybody here was a member of the Inner Light Activation System class, where we went through a bunch of different rituals to activate your inner light, you could call it a Merkaba, you can call it the higher self. We went through this process of establishing a connection with that. You saw that when doing the chakra shuddhi exercise, when doing some of those chakra meditations, maybe not at first, but eventually you started getting all these images rising up to the surface. You started getting all these different experiences bubbling up to the surface, just like what he's talking about. Well, part of the journey is not to run from those images and not to sit there and fight those images. Part of the journey is to allow them to rise to the conscious mind and simply let them pass. Let them pass. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to get wrapped up in them. You're not supposed to grapple them and get stuck there, because if you get stuck there, you're only giving it more life force, more energy. But the apprentice must not think that once this mental scum has ceased to rise, the purifying process is completed. There will always be a purging process as the self advances to higher levels. But the first purging is the most obvious. The later ones are far more subtle, right? So those of you who have been doing this for a little while, consistently, you know that the first purging process was drastic. I remember when I went to Vipassana for the first time, which is it's a meditation center, and they teach you how to meditate. It's a training. It's a particular type of meditation called Vipassana. And this was the first time that I actually sat down and did something like that correctly. And there were people, who we'd be in meditation, and maybe on the second day, spontaneously, they just burst out crying, wailing in tears, right? Or burst out in laughter. Because when this stuff rises to the surface, the purging process can be drastic for the first time. But you'll notice as you keep doing this over the years, it's subtle, and it comes up in life's experiences. It comes up in people. It comes up in different synchronicities, and you learn how to identify them and how to work with them. So instead of you dealing with it, in your dreams or your nightmares, instead of dealing with it like that, you deal with it in living life. It's the same way that if you have an unsolved situation in the past, like maybe you let people push you over, take advantage of you, and say you're starting to affirm yourself and get your confidence up and not let people do that anymore, the situation is going to continue to come up until you show yourself in your subconscious mind that you've dealt with it, that you've neutralized it, and that you've grown past it. And once you grow past it, you stop having those situations show up. In fact, you prevent them before they happen. You don't even give them room to breathe and to fester, to manifest. Cabalistic says, God says, can some mantras heal trauma like shadow work? Absolutely, and that's what some of these mantras are for. That's what many of these mantras are for, especially the beach mantras. They're designed to help align your consciousness with the unconditioned consciousness. The beach mantras are there to help you align yourself with purity. So think about this now. Here you are, a human conscious mind, and you've got ego attachments, and you've got things in the subconscious. If you're constantly vibrating on such a level that aligns you with purity, what that means is the impurity is going to be agitated, right? The impurity is going to be agitated. The same way that people like to burn sage in the house, and then the negativity starts to get upset, whether it's people or whatever. When you start to align yourself and your environment with purity, then the things that are impure become agitated. So yes, it is a way to heal trauma. Those imbalances are forced to either come into balance or become obliterated. That's how it works. Here we come to one of the uses of the method of the creation of images. If the mind has been trained to build definite images at will, then it can build up barriers which will prevent the unwanted intrusion of these uprising thoughts and emotions, and so keep the mental field clear for whatever may arise from the depths or descend from the heights of consciousness. The two methods employ distinct and different mental powers. In the case of the evocation of images, the mind is brought into a controlled state of passivity, and the images arise on the blank mental screen. In the creation of images, such images are deliberately built up by the conscious mind. In the first case, what is required is a certain psychological knack of controlling the mind. In the second case, a steady application of the will and the visualizing faculty is needed, right? Now let us now consider the first exercise in image building. Anamali says, a bija mantra, also rendered Bij mantra, is a monosyllabic mantra believed to contain the essence of a given deity in Tantra and Tantric Hinduism. Absolutely. Now, I mentioned a book on the last live stream, Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound by David Frawley, and he has a whole list of all the Bij mantras and what deities they're associated with, planetary mantras, and so on and so forth. Grab that book if you're really interested in this stuff. It's by David Frawley, Frawley, Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound. The version I have is a light green book cover with Ganesh on the front, the elephant god. Richard Tracy says, are some of those mantras to heal trauma in the David Frawley book you spoke about on Thursday? Absolutely. Absolutely. You typed that just as I was saying it. AZW says, just got that book today. Awesome. Awesome. So flip to the pages that talk about the beach mantras and you'll see what I'm talking about. And there's other there's other more advanced mantras too that I didn't even get to yet. Like I mentioned, there's the Purusha mantras that are helped to purify your physical body and your astral body and to align you with the ultimate body, Purusha. Adam Kadmon, like there's a ritual that's used to align yourself as a cosmic mirror with the cosmic deity. Now, I didn't really get around to that one yet, but I'm working my way to it. Just because there's so many moving parts with it, so many different things to memorize. Just Ridiculing Curriculum says off topic, but why do some quote-unquote bad guys in Japanese fiction have the third eye? Is this a way of demonizing, or is this for symbolic reasons? For example, Madara from Naruto. Well, the first thing to remember is, look, you put bad guys in quotations. It's perspective. They're given to you as the bad guy, but from his perspective, he was not the bad guy. And likely for these other entities. Enlightenment doesn't mean good guy. Right? Typically, there's three forces, right? In Western culture, we got it all biased to good versus evil, and that's not the actual scheme of things. It's not good versus evil. The actuality of it is there are three cosmic forces, and those three cosmic forces operate in harmony, and those three cosmic forces are generation, balance, and destruction. Right? Destruction is not evil. There has to be a god of destruction, or else the god of generation becomes evil, right? There has to be a god of destruction because the other two, they'll get out of balance, right? Did you question that in Dragon Ball Super, Goku and Vegeta have to be trained by the god of destruction, right? Which is pretty much Galactus in the Marvel universe, right? It's not about good or bad. It's about what's required in the universe. I didn't watch Naruto, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say possibly whatever the hell the quote-unquote good guys were doing was starting to get out of balance in such a way that the ecosystem was probably, getting to be a little bit of too much of one thing. And I'm sure he came and made balance. So it's not ever good versus evil. It's generation, operation, destruction. Now the human being, if it threatens his life, you're gonna say this is evil, this is bad. That's why the heroes of like the Avengers, they're gonna have to fight Thanos because he's gonna, be that god of destruction and take those lives. The Avengers, being the gods of balance, of order, they're gonna fight back. Thanos didn't think he was a bad guy, did he? So far, what's the dude's name? Kang the Conqueror. He doesn't think he's a bad guy. It's more realistic when they paint it that way. So that's why enlightenment doesn't mean good. Enlightenment doesn't mean you're the hero. Sometimes enlightenment means that you realize it's time to break this thing down. What did Bobby Hemmett say? Right? This shit is over. He said that the whole point is to destroy the whole illusion. And guess what? When Shiva opens his third eye, what did he say? When Shiva opens his third eye, the entire universe is burned down to ash. Now you would think that sounds like a bad guy, and you want to assemble a super team to stop him from waking up. But it's inevitable. There's a rise, there's a high point, and then there's a fall, and there's a low point, and it cycles like that. So that's why. Janelle, whoa, peace. Kyle the God, peace, greetings. Kyle the God says, my spiritual big brother, I'm always available for class, my bro. God will never get old. Hell yeah. Visual OD, peace. Visual OD says, already sounds like a great script. Attack on Shiva. Attack on Shiva. That's funny. But I'm sure it's been done. It's been done, right? Even if you look at Akira, look at the anime Akira. I watched the movie Brightburn with my son. I don't know if you've ever seen Brightburn, but if you have, then you'll know why I brought that up. And in the end, he did what he came to do, didn't he? All right, let's get back to it then. Let us now consider the first exercise in image building. It is a very simple one, being Kim's Game, as recorded in the book Kim by Rudyard Kipling. A number of articles are placed on a tray and covered by a cloth. Then the cloth is removed and the experimenter looks at the assorted objects for 1 minute. Then the tray is again covered and the student writes down the description of as many of the articles as he can remember and their position on the tray. This sounds so very simple, but in actual practice, it is much more difficult than it appears. This exercise very often reveals to the student some of the weak spots in his mental functioning. For instance, if he finds that certain articles are almost invariably forgotten when used in this exercise, he may be fairly certain that this is due to some psychological happening in his mind and is not simply chance. Check that out. So you got a tray full of objects, right? And there's a cloth on them. Somebody removes the cloth and you got 60 seconds to look at everything. Then the cloth is put back down and then you write down everything you saw on that tray. Now, if there's things that you forgot and didn't notice and didn't record, what that indicates, it's not that you have a weak mind. It indicates that you have certain aspects of your consciousness that are blocking things out. See, we never thought of it that way. You thought, oh, I just missed it, I didn't record it. Well, you missed it and didn't record it because there's a part of your consciousness that blocks it out. If you remember the Gold book, we talk about negative hypnosis. And what is negative hypnosis? Negative hypnosis is when you are in such a trance, a certain kind of trance, that you simply don't notice things at all, right? You can actually be put into a trance and not see something. Like the trance or the hypnosis could be any person wearing a yellow shirt. You absolutely do not see them. And a person can go into a sufficient enough trance and not see the person in the yellow shirt. This is, you lose your keys and you can't find them. That's negative trance. And when you do find them, they're right there on the table. And then there's positive trance where you see stuff that isn't there. And this is one of the things that we do employ in doing some of our rituals. If you want to really work with evocation, talking about evoking it on the astral plane, you put yourself into such a trance that you do see this entity and you communicate with it. Now, that doesn't mean you're making it up. That means that you're utilizing a part of your subconscious mind to work in your favor to do a specific thing. Kimmykin says, whoa, that's creepy. It is. And picture this. The powers that be that produce your marketing messages, that produce your trends, and all the things that the hive mind loves to participate in, included in that hive mind propaganda is also negative trance. There's things that people deliberately bypass, and there's things that people unconsciously bypass due to the programming of the collective. You want to talk about creepy? Yeah, right? There's a lot of things that the general public doesn't see that's right in their face. And when I put it like that, there should be some things that might come to mind for you. MC Maestro says, imagine a negative trance on a large scale. Exactly, that's what I mean. Yes. 223 Soldier, peace. 223 Soldier says, I used to be so much better at visualizing things in my head when I was a little kid. Right, and we all were. But like I said, it doesn't mean that you lost anything. It means that there's something in the way now that, once removed, will restore those faculties. You don't lose them because they're a natural part of your existence. They're a natural part of your existence. So it's not that you lost it, it's that you gathered more stuff on top. Think about it. You didn't lose your childhood. You gained adulthood. You gained culture. You were told how to think and what to do. You gained a bunch of extra stuff. So if you remove that extra stuff and start to chip away at it, you'll start to uncover what's been buried. The same way that this information and the pyramids and the statues of the past and the ancient hieroglyphs and all that other stuff, they're buried over time, and they must be exhumed, the same way that the subconscious mind, he just talked about it here. You got to exercise, you got to evoke these thought forms that have been encased and buried. You feel me? Kyle the God says, so check it. I saw a video of a guy catching his girl cheating on the phone, literally having sex. My heart literally started beating as if it was me. I knew then it was a trigger. Heavy. Absolutely, my man. I know exactly what you're talking about. Absolutely. Right? And that's an example of something rising up from the subconscious. And depending on what you do in response to that will show your level of how you're dealing with it. Mike Hawk says, what's the difference between archons and Satan and his demons? Some claim they are one and the same. Why? Hazard Pie, peace. You brought the donuts. Awesome possum. I mean, so what are archons? Archons are essentially aspects of your subconscious mind that are the gatekeepers. So if you're not ready for certain kind of information, your subconscious mind, these archons, will not let you into that level of information. In fact, it'll provide whatever is necessary to prevent you from moving far. I don't know if you were here earlier, but just like this chapter is talking about, when you start to develop habits, your unconscious mind will provide resistance so that you can't change those habits easily. Same thing with these archons. That happens on a spiritual level. When you are not evolved enough, when you're not realized enough to move to the next level, your collective subconscious will prevent you from moving so that you don't hurt yourself, so that you don't get wrapped up and tangled up in something that you're not ready for. That's archon. That's what that is, right? And if it helps you to demonize that thing, if it helps you to consider the archon as the bad guy, the boogeyman, then that's what it will appear to you as, because that's going to be what's essential to keep you from moving forward. See, if you consider these things as the bad guy, then they effectively neutralize you, because you know damn well you can't do anything about it. So it becomes your gatekeeper. And then once you're ready to bypass it, then you assimilate it and bypass it. As far as what is considered Satan, this is typically what they call the opposition. So yeah, it is a similar thing. The opposition, the accuser, right? If you've read Michael W. Ford, Satan is the accuser, right? It's what prevents you from moving forward, because it's going to tell you what you're not. And it's going to show you all the ways why you can't move forward. So yeah, you can say it's the same thing, right? And you said that Satan and his demons, well, the demons of Satan are all the thoughts that arise and reasons why you can't move forward. All the things that keep you where you are. That's what that is. And I'm sure you were expecting a different answer. You know, space vampires waiting to eat your melanin or whatever, but that would be an example of the gates that keep you where you are. Let me know if that made sense. And please let me know if you disagree with that. All right, let's continue. Anna Molly says, like a parent keeping a kid out of the road till they're old enough to look both ways. Exactly. Anna Molly says, my toddler gets mad as hell at me when I stop him. Exactly. Right? So you are the archon in that situation, right? Are you doing it out of evil? Are you sucking out his melanin? No. It's literally out of love and self-preservation. That's what the archons are. And anybody to tell you different, you know the rest. They haven't passed those gatekeepers. That's why they're telling you to be afraid. Be very afraid. All right, let's keep going. And by the way, this isn't just for spiritual matters. This is for like everyday stuff. Everyday stuff. If you want to be a millionaire, but you can't quite get yourself in alignment to get your business together, and you can't get the discipline to whatever, well, that's an archon, right? Keeping you where you are till you're ready to make that move. So you can want to be a millionaire all you want, but until you're actually ready to break through the habits that are keeping you broke and keeping you not where you want to be, until you can get past those habits, then that thing is an archon keeping you there. All right, so it's not just spiritual stuff, it's everything. So Kim's game, you got this cloth and you got these items on the cloth and items on a tray. The tray is covered with a cloth, and then you have to remember what was on the tray and write it down. Kimikin says, I'm telling my supervisor he's an archon on Monday. Yeah, because I want you to go to the dictionary and look up archon, and you tell me what it says. Look at what the regular people dictionary says an archon is, and your statement that you just made is very much equivalent. Very much equivalent. The archon is your boss, your ruler. Tremble, you weaklings, power and fear, cower in fear. I am your ruler, land, sea, and air. Immense in my girth, erect I stand tall. I'm a nuclear murderer. I am Polaris. Megadeth. All right, so the tray and the objects on the tray, the cloth covering the tray. All right, this sounds so very simple, but in actual practice, it is much more difficult than it appears. This exercise very often reveals to the student some of the weak spots in his mental functioning. For example, if he finds that certain articles are almost invariably forgotten when used in this exercise, he may be fairly certain that this is due to some psychological happening in his mind and is not simply chance. By using the object thus indicated as the starting point of a meditation, he may be able to draw up from the depths of the subconsciousness the particular thought complex which is causing the trouble. Boom. That's a key right there. That's a key right there for you to open a door that may have been locked. Did you get that? When the repressed emotion locked up in his complex has been discharged, it will be found that the object connected therewith has ceased to be in any way different from the other articles used in the exercise. So his thought complexes were preventing him from seeing it because there's something associated with that object deep in the subconscious mind. Are y'all getting this? Are y'all getting this good information? This goes to show exactly why, if you haven't gotten over something, the scenario will continue to repeat in your life. That's exactly why. Because the scenario is related to something in your subconscious mind, and it's causing something like that negative hypnosis. It's causing you to seek out that type of situation over and over again, or to block it out, even though it's happening right in your face. Yes, this is still magical, but there's an explanation for it. You get that? Richard Tracy says, is that off Rust in Peace? Hell yeah, man. That's one of my favorite albums. From beginning to end, Rust in Peace is one of my favorite metal albums of all time. Peace, Alora. So great to see you. Richard says, or Peace sells, who's buying? Yeah, it's off of Rust in Peace. Rust in Peace. Okay, so the definition of Archon. Sunshine Chick says, a person who claims the right to rule or to exercise power or sovereign authority over other human beings. So that's the actual regular people definition of an Archon. Thank you, Sunshine Chick. A person who claims the right to rule or to exercise power or sovereign authority over other human beings. Boom. Mr. Higglesworth says, I admire your ability to take 5, 6 hours a chapter. Shit, man, with the right practice, you can take 8 hours or 3 days a chapter. I believe in you. All right. When comparative efficiency has been reached with this exercise, the next may be commenced. Actually, it may be started at the same time, if the apprentice magician has the necessary time to devote to it. Incidentally, these exercises may be attempted at any time which is convenient, but if a regular time can be set apart for them, so much the better. There's much to be said for using a definite time for the work, but under the conditions prevailing around the student, it may well be impossible to do this. This should not be regarded as a great drawback, but the exercises should be carried out when it is possible to do them. The ingenuity of the apprentice can be used to adapt the exercises to his daily work. For instance, a storekeeper could make his work one long exercise in Kim's game. See that? Integrating it into your daily life. Right? A storekeeper could make his work one long exercise in Kim's game, and as proficiency is gained, he would become a better storekeeper. The next exercise, all right, so did everybody get that Kim's game, right? You have the tray, you have a bunch of objects on the tray, it's covered up by a cloth. The cloth is removed, you look at the tray for 60 seconds, it's covered again, and you write down everything that was on that tray. And you'll find that you repeatedly may miss certain things. And that's due to some thought form locked up in the subconscious mind that's preventing you from seeing it. So if you take those objects that you continually miss and you meditate on them, and what I mean is you sit and you allow for passive images to enter your mind, if you do that, you will be likely led to some sort of thought complex that causes the trouble. And then you neutralize it, you discharge it. And in doing so, you'll find that those items will start to be just like all the other items and you'll be able to remember them. So this can improve your memory. All right, so the next exercise is somewhat different. It consists of gaining the particular knack of the refocusing of perception, a cardinal mental power, and is performed thus. Transfer the vital effort from the optic nerve to the mental perception, or thought seeing as distinct from the seeing with the eye. Let one form of apprehension glide on into the other. Produce the reality of the dream vision by positive will in the waking state. These are instructions given in the Golden Dawn, Volume 4, page 16. Now, for those of you who have studied the book called Cyclomancy, doesn't that sound exactly like the exercises of training the optic nerves, the visual center? And in Panic always talk about cyclomancy. That book wasn't just something some dude made up a bunch of stuff. All occult practices to develop psychic ability. Osani 13 piece. Osani says, are the 12 zodiac the archons? Absolutely. And guess what? Depending on when you're born, You have the qualities described as a zodiac sign. Those qualities also come with limitations. And until you're able to overcome the limitations of your zodiac sign, they will remain as your archon. Mr. Higglesworth says, I meant to say talk about, but my fat fingers did take on my phone. All good. Kimmykin says, I stumbled here flipping through shorts. Glad I did. What book is this? This book is called The Magician, His Training and Work. The Magician, His Training and Work. The author is W.E. Butler. Oh, I see Sunshine Chick already got to it in the chat. There we go. Rorola, peace, greetings. Two Soldier says the circle and the dot exercise in cyclomancy. All right, cool. Glad somebody else is familiar with these exercises. Cool. AZW says facts. Today is my birthday too. Happy Scorpio season. Happy birthday. La la. So, let's run over that real quick. The exercise of transferring the optical nerve visual vision to the thought vision. I'm just going to read that over. The next exercise is somewhat different. It consists of gaining the peculiar knack of the refocusing of perception, a cardinal mental power, and is performed as thus. Transfer the vital effort from the optic nerve to the mental perception, or the thought seeing as distinct from the seeing with the eye. You get that? So transfer the vital effort from the optic nerve to the mental perception, or thought seeing as distinct from the seeing with the eye. Let one form of apprehension glide on into the other. Produce the reality of the dream vision by positive will in the waking state. Personally, I find it easier to do this whenever, like, say I'm at my computer or at my desk and I start dozing off and then I start to come back. I find it's extremely easy to do this, to see something and then gradually go into my imagination and visualize it and then start to transform it, change it, manipulate it. I find it so much easier when I'm like in between waking and sleeping. Like particularly when I'm dozing off, when I'm doing my work and I come back, that's usually when I do this. So perhaps for you, it might be easier whenever you're going to sleep or when you first wake up. Test it out. All right, so he says that this was the instruction given in the Golden Dawn in connection with what are known as the Tatwa visions. Now again, if you were in the Inner Light Activation System class, you know we worked with Tatwa vision. This is where you did your visualization with the Tatwas. Remember, like, you were in that class, and you remember we had the Tatwas, right? And you remember the exercise as far as staring at it and then projecting into it, right? That's what this is all about. But purely as a mental exercise, it is of the greatest value. Actually, it is twofold, for it should be practiced in reverse, i.e., efforts should be made to transfer a mental picture into apparent objectivity so that it may be seen apparently by the physical sense. And as I mentioned, this would be called positive hallucination. Actually, of course, it is not seen by the physical eye, except in certain rare cases. but it appears to be observed. The vision seen by a clairvoyant seer in a crystal or a black mirror is an example of such a projected mental picture. It is well to remember that this is a willed or voluntary projection, since it is a characteristic of certain forms of psychopathology that such projections of mental pictures occur to the sufferer, but are involuntary. It is well, therefore, if the student always so arranges this particular exercise as to make it an entirely voluntary happening. Listen, it should never be done except when he wills to do it, and this must never be when he is occupied with the ordinary mundane duties. Also, and this too is important, he must carefully select the thought picture which he wishes to project, and must not allow, at least not for this exercise, any chance mental picture to be used. So, did you hear what he said here? I like that. Visual OD says augmented reality. Exactly. Exactly. It's like augmented reality. So, when it comes to having visions in a black mirror, in an obsidian mirror, in a crystal ball or a crystal or a bowl of water or whatever, I think most people feel that they can't do it because they're staring at a bowl of water and they're thinking that an image is supposed to pop up. But in truth, the exercise includes you placing yourself into trance and allowing these images to surface from the subconscious mind, and then you project them into the medium, whether it's incense, smoke, whether it's a bowl of water, a crystal, whatever. That's how this is actually done. But see, if all you know is Hollywood and Harry Potter, then you're going to start to assume that it's supposed to be like in the movies. And if that was the truth, you'd be way too distracted to utilize it for any beneficial purpose. The present writer has found that one of the best ways of carrying out the first part of this exercise is to place the object in a good light on a monochrome surface, either dark or light, and use a paper or cardboard tube some 8 inches long and 2.5 inches inside diameter, through which to gaze at it using the left and right eyes alternately. Or the tube may be made rectangular, so that both eyes may be used at the same time. Then, as the object is being steadily held in the field of vision, the eyes should be slightly thrown out of focus, as we sometimes do when we are daydreaming, and the visual picture now apparently brought mentally within the head. This is a psychological trick, which is usually only acquired after a great deal of effort and failure. Look at that, failure, and that's okay. You're supposed to try this stuff and practice it repeatedly, because sometimes you might not do it right. That's part of the plan. That's part of the process. So don't be afraid to fail and to screw it up and to not do it right. That's how you learn. When you do it wrong enough times, when you finally do it right, it all makes sense. Like I mentioned that meditation center that I went to. Well, the real story is, the whole reason I went to that Vipassana center is because I had a book about Vipassana and about how awesome and great of a meditation technique it is, and how these ascended masters gave their testimony on how to properly do Vipassana and their methods. And I sat there and I read that book, and I figured I understood it. I was a master at it, right? I thought I had it figured out. I just was reading the book. So then I figured, oh, look, there's a Vipassana center near me. That's really cool. I never would have guessed. And I went there. And when I actually did it properly, it blew my mind, because I had never done it before. Did you hear that? I read a book and I thought I understood it. I thought I mastered it because I read the book. But when I actually went and the actual teacher showed me how to do it, I realized I had never done it before. Have you ever had that experience where you think you have something and you understand it, But then when you actually do it right for once, you realize that all those times before was nothing compared to this. That's what he says here. It's a psychological trick which is usually only acquired after a great deal of effort and failure. It is analogous to the knack of learning to balance when we first attempt to ride a bicycle. Once the knack has been gained, it will be found increasingly easy to bring this visual image into mental apprehension. A further development is to close the eyes during the first attempts only slightly, then more fully in subsequent ones, until the final stage is reached when the student is able to see clearly inside his head, as it were, the picture of the object concerned, his eyes being closed in the meantime. Now, as with literally all the different books and topics that I talk about on this channel, it all comes back together. It all comes back. See, I'm not talking about different stuff. What he just described here is talked about in this book, Dharana Darshan, right? And if you read at least the beginning portion of this book, you know what I'm talking about. He says that meditation is when the observer and the observed become one, when what you're seeing inside your head is exactly what you are seeing with your eyes. And it's possible to do that. In fact, it isn't until you do that that you've achieved meditation. Here we go. Well, if you got this book, then you'll know. Boom. Dharana Darshan. Grab that book. It has enough meditation exercises in there to... If you didn't buy any other books on meditations and practices, then you would be set. You would be great to go. Richard Tracy says the word concentration means one-pointedness. Just as we need a sharp pencil to write with or a sharp knife to cut with, the mind also must be sharpened through the practices of concentration. Yes, that's what the word dharana, that's what dharana means. So you're right there. I'm pretty sure that's a quote from the book. I'm going to say it is, but I'm going to say pretty sure. Okay, so once this has been accomplished and practice has made it fairly easy, the complementary half should be essayed. The object chosen should be observed, and the perception transferred in the usual way to the subjective mental screen. Meanwhile, a monochrome surface, such as a white disc on a black surround, or a black disc on a white surround, or a crystal or black concave mirror, should have been placed so that the student can use it as a screen upon which to project his mental picture. He should now open his eyes sufficiently to see the disc or mirror, which should be in a dim light, whilst still holding the picture on the mental screen. Then, by a quiet, calm effort of the will, he should project the picture outwardly onto the screen. Again, there is a psychological knack to be gained, but once it is gained and stabilized by subsequent practice, a very great step forward has been taken. It must again be emphasized that this projection should only be done deliberately at the will of the apprentice magician, and any involuntary projections should be sternly resisted. This is one thing you'll find about W. Butler in this book and the next book that we're going to read. He talks about in these training levels, it's not about like just visualizing random stuff and whatever comes to you as part of it. He talks about here that when you're doing these visualization exercises, you only want to see what you're trying to see. If you see anything else, you didn't do it correctly. See, you're training your third eye, and you're training to discipline your faculty of inner vision. And it is not discipline if you're seeing random stuff. If you want to visualize a banana, but you're seeing a monkey, sure, that might be cool, but you're not doing the exercise, right? So that's one thing that he's going to continually point out here, especially at these beginner levels. You want to be able to visualize what you intend to visualize and not other stuff, right? Now, when it comes to the passive visualization, when you're allowing images to come up, yeah, that's what that's for. But when it comes to projecting, like he's talking about here, you only want to have the image you're talking about in mind. And knowing how the mind works, you know, like a wild monkey, they call it the monkey mind, you might be trying to project a banana, but end up thinking about other stuff. This is why I said discipline comes into play. You got to focus the mind like a laser beam, not like a spread out light. Not like a spread out shotgun. You want to be like a sniper. Peace, Society Ejects. Welcome, welcome, my friend. Hope you're having a fabulous evening. All right, any involuntary projections should be sternly resisted, right? When the knack has been gained, it is possible to project such a mental image so clearly that it is to all intents and purposes as though one were perceiving it with the physical eyes. And that's pretty cool when it happens. Like I said with me, I usually have astounding success when I'm half awake, half asleep. But being an artist myself, and, you know, I remember before actually having video editing programs, like in the 2000s, the early 2000s, I remember, like, I'd hear my favorite song and I would visualize a music video and like how it would be cut in the different scenes. Like, I've always been somebody who would vividly imagine certain things in my head. So thankfully for me, I never really lost that ability to like see things clearly in my head and project it out how I want it to be. But this is a skill that can be exercised and improved with practice, And everybody's different too now. Some people visualize not necessarily with vision. He said earlier in this chapter that the other senses should be worked on as well. Some people can taste and they become great culinary experts, right? Some people are very good with sensations and textures. Some people are awesome with sound and audio crafting, right? And of course, the best are people who have great proficiency with more than one sense, because then they can start to create an experience. Think about great directors. You know, they know what kind of music should be behind the scene. They know how the speed of the scene and the colors and the angle. They can create an experience for you to become immersed in. These great movies like that, they're not just random. Like somebody had to visualize that vividly in their head first, down to the detail. And then others, you have teams of people who work on each specific thing, right? So this is magical, but that doesn't mean it isn't used in the mundane world. Anything that you think is great and awesome, somebody visualized that and brought it down. You understand that? So it's, yes, it's still magical, but it's also mundane. Visual OD says, I imagine being in video when I'm singing in the shower. And keep doing that. Keep doing that, right? Listen to your favorite song and imagine yourself as the singer or the, you know what I'm saying? Like what I do that. And then when the guitar solo comes on, all of a sudden I'm the guitar player. Or my favorite drum part comes on, all of a sudden I'm the drummer. Do that. Put, like, what you're doing there also is you're taking that good feeling of that music and you're putting yourself right in the center of it. All that positive energy going right back to yourself. All right. A further stage in this mental projection is one which is not often met without a further stage in this mental projection is one which is not often met with outside the occult lodges. It is possible, if the magician has the materializing type of body, or can employ a materializing medium, to cause such mental images to be clothed with ectoplasmic substance and become visible to the physical senses of all present. Now, this is really cool too, because I happen to know somebody who's really good at this, to the point that when we're working together and they visualize something, I can start to see it. It's a really cool experience. And you also get that with people who are great storytellers. They might just be sitting here telling you a story and you see all the scenes going through your head as they're telling it, and you become immersed in it. It's almost like watching a movie cast out of their imagination. Again, this is mundane stuff, but it is still magic. Let me read that again. A further stage in this mental projection, right? Because we're talking about mental projection here, right? Again, shout out to Cyclomancy. I don't know if y'all got that book, but you better read it. He's saying here that not only can you visualize something in your head and cast it out onto a medium, like, and when he says medium, he's talking about maybe incense smoke or fire, scrying water, a crystal, whatever. That's the medium, right? Just like film is a medium that you put the movie onto, or MP3 digitization is the medium that you put the music onto. He says a further stage in this mental projection is one which is not often met with outside the occult lodges. So usually only people who have trained to do this can do this. It is possible, if the magician has the materializing type of body or can employ a materializing medium, to cause such mental images to be clothed with ectoplasmic substance and become visible to the physical senses of all present. I remember specifically a year ago, me and this particular person that I'm talking about decided to do some of the sacred mushrooms together, and he managed to evoke a spirit to physical observation, and we communicated with this spirit, and it was a terrifying experience, but it was really cool because we both were seeing the same thing. And this person, you know, was channeling this entity, and we had a visualizing medium to put it into. So yeah, everything that he's saying here is very possible. Another way in which an apparent objectivity can be given to the projected images is by a process of telepathic radiation. Here, the psychic researchers form a phantasmogenetic center. I ain't never heard that before. Phantasmogenetic center. Here, the projected image, localized in one point of space, becomes what the psychic researchers term a phantasmogenic center, and the simultaneous telepathic radiation by the magician induces what is not usually experienced outside the lodges, except apparently accidentally. Okay, so that's more of what I was talking about there. That's more of what I was talking about there. The telepathic radiation. It's almost like you know, you have a hotspot on your phone where you might have that friend who doesn't have service on their phone and they ask you to do a hotspot and you cut on your hotspot, and now they can receive your internet. Or maybe your friend didn't pay their internet bill and they want to play Fortnite with you, so they got to turn on their phone's hotspot so that their Xbox can connect to it. That's a lot like what he's talking about here. You can focus enough if and you might have heard me in the past talk about two types of magicians. There's the Hermetic and the Orphic. Well, this comes naturally to some Orphic magicians. Some of these Orphic magicians can naturally do this stuff. This is why Orphic magicians and Hermetic magicians work together as a team. This is why people like Aleister Crowley and Dion Fortune, all them, they had these groups. When they were doing their rituals together, this is what they were doing, right? You might look at John Dee, you know, with the, what are those angels called? Somebody tell me in the chat. The one group of spirits that I never worked with, the angels, what are they called? Somebody project that information into me. Well, anyways, when they were working with those particular angels back in the 1500s, John Enochian, thank you, Hazard Pie, you saved my day. Enochian angels. So John Dee was the Hermetic magician, and his partner, whose name I forget because I didn't really study Enochian stuff, his partner was the Orphic magician. And the partner was the one that saw and channeled the entity while John Dee asked questions, recorded everything. So they worked together. One person receives, one person transmits. Just like the left pillar and the right pillar. So if you're an Orphic magician, don't feel bad or out of place, right? And if you're a Hermetic magician, again, don't feel bad and out of place. The two work together. Some people have a natural ability to do some of this stuff, but they don't understand how or why. And there's other people who understand how and why, but don't necessarily have that natural ability, right? Peace, Veronica. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Jay Baldahale, peace. Yeah, so I'm telling you, this stuff is it's very possible, especially when everybody involved is doing their work, right? When everybody involved is actually practicing non-attachment, focusing their minds, getting their information right, you can actually work together. And check this out, y'all. It does not have to be in the same room. Yes, you can still work with people across the phone. It's people in this very chat right now that I've practiced remote viewing with, right, successfully. There's people that I've practiced all types of stuff, channeling specific spirits with. You don't have to be in the same room. You just got to find somebody that you're connected with and practice. Shoot, I practiced remote viewing just last night with somebody here. I didn't even tell them. They just told me, and it all clicked together. So I'm going to read that again because it's pretty cool. Another way in which an apparent objectivity can be given to the projected images is by a process of telepathic radiation. Here, the projected image, localized in one point of space, becomes what the psychic researchers term a phantasmagenetic center. And the simultaneous telepathic radiation by the magician induces what is known as a collective hallucination in those around. Again, this is not usually experienced outside the lodges, except apparently accidentally. So this is something that you can actually master and do. Now, I don't want to give anybody any evil ideas, but just think about the sleeping people that you call NPCs and how much easier it would be to cast an illusion. Experiment, do what thou wilt, but just remember, all of reality is a balance. So if you have any, no, I'll stop right there. Be smart about what you're doing. Be smart. Oh, that's a good one. In Society, Eject says, now that I think of this, I've seen this happening in church before. Right, right. That's another good one. Visual OD says this might be why they call group hallucination. what they call group hallucination. Science can't really explain why this occurs. The Bible says when two or more are gathered, there I am. Right. 223 Soldiers says some ayahuasca rituals have people seeing all the same things. Right. And consider in these ayahuasca ceremonies, there's usually one or two or three people who are these masters, these experts that are guiding and leading the whole process, right? What are they guiding? They're not just making sure you don't hurt yourself. They're also facilitating the entire journey. Come on now. Too many gems being dropped here for you to not utilize this information. The technique of this latter method depends upon certain training, which allows the conscious mind to be more closely linked with its subconscious levels. The magical feat known as the operation of invisibility is based on this technique, though in some cases something more enters into it, for the ectoplasmic substance can produce some very unusual effects. The present writer once took a photo of a high-grade occultist. On developing the film, there was no trace of the figure of the person concerned, though all the chair in which he was sitting at the time showed quite clearly. It was just as though a photo had been taken of an empty chair. Man. And perhaps some of you have heard of what's called glamour magic, right? A big way of how glamour magic works is that you focus the form of what you desire to be perceived as and cast that into the other person's eyes. So when they're seeing you, they're seeing the projected image. And even if they're not physically seeing it, they're feeling the effects as if they were seeing it. And that's something that you don't have to be an occultist to do. Some people do that out of sheer willpower. I'm telling you it's true. I done did it. This stuff can be used in so many different ways, and it's a lot easier than you might think. But in every case, it takes concentration. It takes focus, right? Not just you want to do it, but a certain level of inner work. Thank you. Mike Hawk says this information is top tier. Thank you. Listen, if it's top tier, you agree, hit that like button. Hit the like button. Because we have more people here than actual likes. So I don't know, people just listening with a grumpy face and arms folded up. I can't believe he said that about Marchons. But if you're digging it, go ahead and dig into that like button. That'll make me feel a whole lot better. All right, let's continue. So yeah, it was just as though a photo had been taken of an empty chair. In the East, there is a tradition of such Akashic shields. You ever heard of an Akashic shield? An Akashic shield, which can produce invisibility. And it may be that further research into the properties of the substance we know of as ectoplasm will bring new facts to light, bearing upon this subject. In the case of the purely mental operation of invisibility, it is to be remembered that we normally notice those things which either strike us forcibly or in which we have some definite interest, or which are sufficiently isolated as to attract our attention. But a great deal of what we see is not noticed consciously at all. Though, as hypnotic experiments prove, the memory is retained in the mind and can be brought up into consciousness. What does that mean? That means your eyes can see this whole page and you don't remember what you saw, but it is recorded in the subconscious mind, right? Science has proven that. Science has proven that. Your eyes your mind takes in and records everything you see with your eyes and everything that you feel with your body, everything you hear with your ears. It takes it all in. But your awareness is a tiny slice of all that data, a tiny sliver of all your. So this is how I put it, in the student teacher conference. Your subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, is like a gigantic Amazon warehouse. So think about this big ass warehouse full of all these different products from Amazon that you could buy. Big ass warehouse full of all these different products. But here's the thing, the light is turned off. It's pitch black in there. So you know that all the products from Amazon are in this warehouse, right? But all you have is a flashlight. So whatever that flashlight is shined upon, that's all that your conscious mind is aware of. Your conscious mind is only aware of what that flashlight shines on. Now, you can walk up and down that warehouse, but whatever the light lands on, that's what you're actually aware of. That's how the conscious mind works within the subconscious mind. So you're picking up everything, but you're only aware of a tiny slice, a tiny sliver. Now, we can go further in that analogy and talk about how everything is most likely not labeled properly, but that's for another story. Grumpy faced and crossed arms. Volume on 10. Full attention. I don't believe in magic, but something about this is preventing me from leaving. All right, so let's keep going. Again, in the case of the purely mental operation of invisibility, it is to be remembered that we normally notice things which either strike us forcibly. So you're gonna notice something that demands your attention. You're gonna notice something that you're actually interested in, right? You're gonna see what you want to see, or things that are sufficiently isolated to attract your attention. You're gonna see all that, duh. And that's part of the game, to place certain things so that you will pay attention to them. But a great deal of what we see is not noticed consciously at all. Though, as hypnotic experiments prove, the memory is retained in the mind and can be brought up into consciousness. If, therefore, the one who wishes to be unnoticed adapts such mannerisms or alters any unusual appearance he may have, it is quite possible for him to pass in a crowd without being noticed by us. If, in addition, he has gained the knack of telepathic suggestion, then he affects those around him as the hypnotist affects his entranced subject when he tells her that she will be unable to see another person who is in the room. Right? Remember, I just mentioned that as well. The story given in Luke chapter 5, verse 30 suggests that Jesus made use of such an operation of invisibility on occasion. Luke chapter 5, verse 30. You might see Jesus using the telepathic invisibility. Shit, I've done it. A lot of us have done it. You ever been late to work and like kind of rushing in and like in your head it's like you're thinking like, I hope I slip under the radar, I hope nobody notices me, I hope nobody sees me. You know, imagine doing that so intensely that it actually works. I've definitely done that plenty of times. Whew, God bless America. I probably mastered that skill. The occultist Dion Fortune termed this particular occult operation psychological hocus pocus, and so it can be. But just as hocus pocus is the ultra-Protestant garbling of the words of consecration and the Roman Church, hoc est corpus meum, right? That's where we get hocus pocus from. An actual consecration from Roman Catholicism, hoc est corpus meum, hocus pocus. So the operation of invisibility is a misuse, as a general rule, of that mighty power within by means of which the trained magician may produce changes of consciousness in others. This is powerful because remember at the beginning of this book, he talked about magic being the intentional change of consciousness. Well, guess what? It don't stop there. You can produce changes of consciousness in other people. It will be remembered that we referred to the two types of magician, and here we have them at work. In all magical work, these two types will be found. But trouble arises when one school of thought dwells exclusively upon one or other subject. However, the physical materialization of the image is much more uncommon than the collective mental, but it does take place. So yes, understand there is the collective hallucination on purpose, but there's also materialization of an image, materialization of something that was in your head. Both do exist, but of course, the collective hypnosis is more common, right? So far, we've been dealing with visual form building, but the training of the magician extends to all the senses. The technique we have here given for visual work should be extended to cover all the other senses. In practice, it will be found that the usual scale of success in these evokings will be headed by either visual or audible images, followed by taste, smell, and touch in that order. Now, some of us may have developed the sensitivity to touch before the others, but hey, do what you gotta do. When training for audible image making, the use of gradually diminishing sound, such as the note of a tuning fork, is great help, and the projection of the audible images is assisted by using the old gypsy trick of listening to the sea. In the large seashells, so commonly used as ornaments in Victorian times. So check this out. He just talked about, remember with the vision, there's a projection of an image and also the reception of an image. So here he's talking about audible image make, so making images of sound, making sounds, images of sound. He says that using a gradually diminishing sound, like a tuning fork. So in other words, you hit a tuning fork and it goes beep, then it slowly fades off. That's something that you can use because you can reproduce that tone in your psychic ear, and even though it fades out, you can hold on to it and continue it. This is how you develop clairaudience. You know, people talking about communicating with spirits and having them actually talk back to you in the English language. This is how you develop that. Or even to be able to hear conversations at a distance, or to be able to hear the echoes of the past, something that may have happened in the room. When you guys watched the series Akosha, the Star Wars, Ahsoka, whatever it is, with the Star Wars Jedi Twi'lek, and how she was able to go to a certain place and get whispers and echoes of what happened there moments before, right? All this stuff comes from these type of schools, right? Now, like he said, one way is listening to a diminishing note, like a tuning fork. And the projection of audible images is assisted by using the old gypsy trick of listening to the sea in a large seashell. You guys have heard of that, right? Where you can put a seashell up to your ear and you hear the ocean still. So commonly used as ornaments in Victorian times. Personally, I like to use white noise or pink noise in from YouTube. Like, you hear this music now, but every now and then I like to listen to just pure noise, like shh, you know what I'm saying? I find that to be very helpful and cleansing too. If we wish to provide a more modern audible screen upon which we may project our audible image, we may use a pair of headphones which are energized by an electric current so regulated as to give a steady note in the phones, and capable of being so adjusted as to allow of varying notes being used. This variation in the audible screen is the analogy in sound of the flashing colors used in the meditations based on the glyph of the tree of life. As with the visual work, so in the audible. Very audible projections must be absolutely left out. So in other words, when you're doing it, no matter what sense you're working with, you only, when it comes to the projection aspect, you only want to be dealing with what you're intentionally dealing with, not extra random stuff popping up. So he says involuntary audible projections must be absolutely left out. If they persist, a visit to a good psychologist, preferably one of the school of Jung, is indicated, together with an immediate cessation of all magical work. It is no part of the magical training that one shall acquire new powers at the expense of one's sanity. Did you hear that? It is no part of the magical training that one shall acquire new powers at the sense of one's sanity. You're not gonna get siddhies in the trade-off of going crazy. It is for this reason that the genuine occult schools and orders insist that any natural psychic who wishes to join them must close down his faculties until he has been thoroughly trained along the occult line. Now, when he says natural psychic, we're also talking about the Orphic types. So it says any of these natural psychics who wishes to join them must close down his faculties until he has been thoroughly trained along the occult line. And experience has provided the necessity for this rule, which is found in both Eastern and Western traditions. So hell, they do this even in India and whatnot as well. Asaya bin Yisrael, peace. When doing the audible exercises, a very good method is the following, which has been used successfully by the present writer. It involves cooperation with a sympathetic helper. So under certain circumstances, it may be out of court, but where it can be used, it is very effective. Let the helper, whose voice should be familiar to you, speak slowly in his normal voice, taking some piece of poetry or some general piece of reading. Using the same method as in the visual work, transfer perception to the mental levels. After a minute, the helper should stop speaking and remain quiet. So in other words, remember what he was saying about shifting the actual physical visual image of your eye and then shifting that to the mental image so that you see it within just as clear as you saw it with your eyes? Not do that with audio, right? Have somebody that you're familiar with, their voice, have them read something or talk for a little while, and as you're listening, slowly reproduce that inside your head. So even when they stop talking, you can still hear them as if they were talking, right? This is how you practice your astral senses. This is how you practice clairvoyance, clairaudience. Has anybody ever told you how to practice clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairgustance, other than Swami Niranjan Ananda Saraswati and maybe Ophiel? By the way, when you practice listening to someone speak and then replicating their voice in your head, this is also setting up the basis for telepathic communication with that person, or channeling the essence of that individual. And I'm not talking about myself, but there are other people who you may not be able to hear speak anymore, yet you've got plenty examples of their essence and their energy that you can use to tap in and channel them. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Ain't that what the Bible said? When the shift of audible perception has become fairly easy, the reverse projection should be attempted, the shell or earphones brought into use, and the audible images projected until they appear objective. You hear what I'm saying, Society Ejects? A further stage, when this proficiency has been attained in some measure at least, is to hear imaginatively someone whose voice is familiar to you giving a lecture. The lecture must first be formulated by you, but at some one point you should cease to formulate and simply listen mentally. The subconscious will carry on the lecture. The subconscious will carry on the lecture, and you simply listen to it. Guys, they are literally he's literally telling you what it's like to channel a person who may have passed on, what it's like to channel a spirit. This is how it's done, y'all. Again, I'm telling you from experience, this is how it's done. You start the conversation, then you let it roll. Right? It's just like a fire. You take your little spark, you take your lighter or your flint, and you ignite the fire, and after you nurture it for just a little bit, it will start to take care of itself given the proper fuel. So communicating with spirits or channeling the spirit of a person, it's like that. You start with what you have, and then you let that fire burn. Let me know if you hear what I'm saying, if you hear what this book is saying. Let me know if you hear what this book is saying. So I don't know what you call doing the work, but it's very rare that you get somebody giving you the work straight up. It's extremely rare, and I'm sure you can attest based on what we've seen out here in the wild lands of the internet. Anna Molly says, man, I didn't know that was actual magic. I do that with authors and singers of the past, pretend convo. Yeah, that's what I keep saying in this particular chapter. It's mundane, but it's still magic. It's magic, but it can be used in a mundane way. And this is why people say, like, you're already doing magic, you just don't realize it, right? There's so many Christians doing black magic, but they don't even realize it. You sitting here holding grudge, being angry with somebody, thinking negative, nasty thoughts about somebody, and every time they see him, they give a little stank face. Like, that's black magic. You're literally condensing harmful energy and sending it to that person that you don't like, right? And if you put it that way, everybody's doing that. I mean, I don't do that, but everybody's doing that. The same thing with this type of stuff here. What he's explaining to you is that intentionally utilizing the force of your imagination, or we could say the force of your third eye, this is how you discipline and structure your practice so that you can start to have results on purpose and not just every now and then on accident. Right. Wayne M says, also with reading writings you see in the mind. Yes. We've never heard Dion Fortune's voice, but I still managed to channel Dion Fortune. J. Baldahell says, yes, be patient. It is work. Absolutely. Julius says, what on earth you read? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's in the title of this video. The one that you clicked on to watch. Asai Ben Yisrael says, I have been in and out about the info, but on a daily basis from what I studied, it's so effortless. So that's why we should focus. Question mark. We should focus because the mind in its natural state is scattered. So even though we read this or listen to this, unless you take effort to retain it and hold it and use it as soon as possible, like I said in a very recent video, whenever you learn something, you want to go ahead and try to practice it immediately, because the mind is naturally dissipated and you're going to float off to something else. There's so many distractions. Our culture today is a culture built and packed, bursting at the seams with distractions. So unless you focus on what exactly you want to do, you will be distracted. Distractions are the option. You will be distracted. So that's why focus is so important. This book, if you haven't noticed, this type of stuff used to be secret. This used to be kept tucked away, right? Now it's just out here. This is a public YouTube video. Joe Biden, Jesus, and everybody can watch this video. But the thing is, after this video, most people are going to go do something else and get distracted and forget. So it's ineffective. Yeah, it goes into the subconscious mind, but those seeds may or may not be watered and nurtured. So focus and discipline is about taking this info here and finding the very next opportunity that you can use it. Hazard Pie says, is distraction a veil? I would say distraction is, and I hate to say this, distraction is one of the tools of the archons, right? It's one of those things that keeps you from going where you don't need to go. If you're very sensitive and subjected to distraction, you know, that's an indication of a mind that still could benefit from more discipline. And we all get distracted. I get distracted. But distraction is there so that you stay at the level you're supposed to stay at until you're ready for the next one. Yes, we can call it a veil because it is part of the illusion. All right, how long is this chapter? We're about to find out, aren't we? So yeah, a further stage when this proficiency has been attained in some measure at least is to hear imaginatively someone whose voice is familiar to you giving a lecture. If that don't hit so close to home, you need to go watch you a video right now of your favorite lecturer giving a lecture. The lecture must first be formulated by you, but at one point you should cease to formulate and simply listen mentally. The subconscious will carry on the lecture, and you will simply you will simply listen to it. The final stage of this is when the audible images are projected and you hear the voice appearing apparently objectively. Again, the warning: projection of the audible images must be voluntary and under the control of the waking self. This exercise is invaluable when the student essays the work of the Chaldean method, where the names of power are vibrated. When the mental training has been brought to a fair pitch of proficiency, the visual and audible images arising will be capable of being used for purposes of communication between the conscious and superconscious levels of the student's nature, and will form the basis of the voluntary and controlled psychism which is required for the deeper ranges of the work. Trying to tell y'all, man, this is what it is. Like, this is exactly what you must do. Exactly he didn't leave nothing out. He didn't fill it up with fluff to distract you or confuse you. If you're not getting this, and hey, maybe it wasn't your time just yet. Maybe it's not your time yet to get it, because this is plain as day. When you practice your visual sense and you practice your audio sense, you're establishing a medium for communication with your soul. Not with the devil and the demons and the demiurge. You're establishing the medium for communication with your soul. I'm not just reading a book. I've done this already a long time ago. I figured this out a long time ago. I've been practicing this. This is part of my daily work, right? So I'm not just reading some random book to you trying to sound cool. Everything that he described here is probably the easiest way to do this. Luis Garcia's Chaldean method. So basically think about the rituals where you have to, quote unquote, vibrate the God names and vibrate the name of the spirit, right? Yod He Vav He. Well, you're not just doing that, right? You're doing that on the inside too. You're echoing it throughout the inner space of your unconscious mind. It's echoing throughout the void of your unconscious mind. And he could have said Chaldean method. He could have also said Bij mantras or any of mantras that we're doing. Yes, you repeat the mantra on the outside, but here's the secret. You don't just repeat these mantras blindly. You want to memorize these mantras on autopilot so that they start involuntarily and spontaneously begin echoing throughout your head randomly. Randomly, you should start to be hearing your mantras. That's when you know it's working, because it's echoing throughout your inner space and it's causing vibrations within your higher nature. Oscarini Padrasoni says, is this comparable to Franz Barton's work? Absolutely. Absolutely. Two different schools, but we're dealing with the same stuff. We're dealing with the same thing. Now, Franz Barton, of course, is more meticulous. He's going into great detail, and he's taking you through very slowly. So slow that people who ain't built for it will naturally drop off. And it's supposed to be that way. It's like high elite training. Right? Franz Barton was out here creating Navy SEALs of the occult, right? Army Rangers, whatever. And if you're not built for it, you fall off, and that's all right. What W. Butler here is trying to do is he's trying to open the doors for people who might have the aptitude but don't know or don't understand. And he's giving you more information so that you can make a more conscious decision about being interested in continuing in this practice. He's making it more realistic. He's making it more, basically he's doing what Ophiel was doing. He's helping it make sense for people who are not going to sit here and read Dion Fortune and not going to sit here and read Madame Blavatsky, right? Society Eject says, so my book walked out of my house, The Art and Practice of Creative Visualization, LOL, and I went on Amazon to buy a new copy. It's over $200. Great day. Well, they charging for these books. They charging for these somebody. It can't be one person, man. It can't be one person. I don't know what it is. It ain't even a person. It's never the person. It's the force. It's the force, the patterns of nature. I guess I'm kind of like on the end of the wave. So if you don't get it by the time you find me, good luck, because all you got is TikTok. Who knows? All right, let's finish this chapter. Yeah, so I like that. You're creating that medium for communication, right? So he's saying here, when the mental training has been brought to a fair pitch of proficiency, the visual and audible images arising will be capable of being used for purposes of communication between the conscious and superconscious levels of the student's nature. If you study the Vedic stuff, you know we're talking about buddhi. And will form the basis of the voluntary and controlled psychism, which is required for the deeper ranges of the work. There's deeper levels in this. This is only the beginning. The student, from his own ingenium, will be able to construct similar exercises for the other three senses. So he done gave you the breakdown of how to do this for your visual and for your audio. It should be easier now to do it for taste, smell, and touch. If you just sit still right now and focus, I bet you can smell lemon. I bet you can smell lemon. Zesty lemon peel, yellow, fragrant, tangy, spicy. Now, if you can do that, you can do that with taste, and you can also do that with feeling, with touch and texture. I'm pushing out psychic waves of lemon smell, so hopefully you catch it. All right, it is important to relax thoroughly before attempting these exercises, and slow, deep breathing should be employed in order to reduce the excessive speed of the mental action. If these exercises are carried out methodically until proficiency is gained, the apprentice magician will be equipped for the next stage of his training. Alright, how y'all feeling? Y'all alright? Y'all ready to go to sleep, or y'all want to do one more chapter? Y'all ready to go to sleep, or one more chapter? See? AZW says, LOL, caught it. Azurpia says, mouth actually watering when I think of lemon. Right? Now get this. It's not because I'm so awesome and amazing. It's because you are able to tap into that aspect of your subconscious mind to produce that within. And that is what the magic is. It's because you are able to produce that within. That's badass. That's cool. That's awesome. Right? You did it. AZW says, one more. Indentured Rebel, peace, greetings, welcome. Cosmic Traveler says, this book goes hard, a gem, right? And that's why I picked it, man. Apparently I know how to pick them. No, but this is a great teacher. If you have the time and the budget and the desire, get all of his books and read them all. For real. Each one of them is a very much useful to your journey. I promise you that. Lords of Light. That right there that was the first one I read by him. Get Lords of Light. Get all his books if you can. Ashley B says, one more, please. Cool. WT says, it's not even 11 yet. One more. All right. And Amali says, I'm good. West Coasting. J Baldahell says, I'm down for more. All right, let's do one more. Let us do one more. One more. Uno más, as Luis Garcia says. Kimmy Kin says, how often do you do live sessions? I should probably put this like on the main page, huh? Every Tuesday, we release an episode of the podcast, The Limitless Mind, where we help to make you, or help you understand your limitlessness. So that's Tuesdays. Thursdays, we have a live stream. It's intended to be a part of the membership. But I think sometimes people just want to let me talk. But you're welcome to talk too. And then, of course, on Saturdays, we do this book study. So that's 3 times. 3 times. Sunshine Chick is tapping out. That's all right. We'll timestamp it here, and we'll see you next time. I appreciate you. Visual OD says, we're making up for lost time. One good turn deserves. All right, let's continue. Chapter 8. Words of Power, the magical use of sound. Most of us have memories of the many stories told us in our childhood, wherein were certain words and phrases which were held to have magical power and significance. The open sesame of Ali Baba's treasure cave, the abracadabra of the magician, and many more of such magical phrases all focused our attention upon the possibilities latent within certain words and names. But we are not unique in this. In all ages and in all parts of the world, the idea that names and words had magical power has been held. More particularly in the East, this subject has been made the object of deep study and research, though our own Western scriptures show that the same idea was held by the people from whom much of our Christian teaching was primarily derived. It was an ancient mystery teaching that God spake and the worlds became. And this idea underlines both the teachings of the Alexandrian Jew, Philo, and that of the author of the magnificent prologue to the Gospel of St. John. In the Old Testament, we read of the Creator giving a name to the first man, and then that first man giving a name to the first woman. We read also that the animals were brought before Adam, and by whatsoever name he called them, that was their name. The present writer, as a child, regarded this naming feat of Adam as something in the nature of a major miracle. To invent names for all living animals seemed to call for supernatural imagination. Can you imagine that? Like, Adam is sitting there in the garden, and then God brings up a new animal, and like, language isn't even created yet. He just mumbles something. He just like utters a sound. Elephant, giraffe. No one has ever said any of this stuff ever before. Penguin, tarantula. That's a funny concept. Later, we read of Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham, and we learn too of the wrestling of Jacob with the angel at the ford. Except thou tell me thy name, I will not let thee go. And we are told that because he had so wrestled with the angel of the presence, his name was changed to Israel, striver with God. MC Maestro says, in the Hebrew tradition, the names of animals and Adam uttered are of Cabalistic and Gematria correspondences. Yeah, that sounds more realistic. More realistic. You know, especially since, you know, if the story would actually happen, especially since language wasn't a part of the plan yet. So later comes the account of the theophany in a burning bush, when Moses was given the name of his God. This name, which is translated in the authorized version as I am that I am, is, in the Hebrew, Eheye Asher Eheye. Shout out to Demons of Magic. Which Moffat translates as, I will be what I will be. And this seems a far better rendering of the Hebrew. I've been told by a Hebrew scholar that it could be even more truly translated as, I am the ever becoming. But the sacred name, par excellence, among the Hebrews, was the Tetragrammaton, or the four-lettered name. So sacred was it held to be that a substitute name, Adonai, my Lord, was used. In Christian usage, the Tetragrammaton has been turned into the name Jehovah. But in point of fact, this particular form seems to have been either invented or copied from some unknown source by Tyndale, in whose translation of the Bible it appears for the first time. Some may here protest that the books of the Old Testament are simply the record of the ethical and philosophical progress of a wandering Bedouin tribe, as it enlarged its concepts from the God who walked in the garden in the cool of the day, as any other Eastern chief might do, to the magnificent conception of the post-exilic prophet, thus saith the high and holy one, who inhabiteth in eternity, whose name is holy. A progress, moreover, which brought it as a nation to a monotheism not apparent in any contemporary nation. This, of course, is true, but there are other angles of approach. The normal Christian view that the Hebrews were being guided by the eternal into larger concepts is one such angle. And there is another which is of greater relevance to the subject of words of power. And pause right there, by the way. I never even considered the fact that if you read the Bible from beginning throughout, it's not just man who's evolving, but God's evolving too. Like, the understanding and concept of God is evolving from Genesis all the way through. Interesting. I never thought of that. guided by the eternal into larger concepts. The ancient rabbis said that the Torah, the law, was the body, but the Kabbalah was the spirit of their religion. So the record of the history of the Hebrews, interwoven as it is with the folklore of the race and the racial memories of Abraham's descendants, is but the outer appearance. Within this outer appearance was and is concealed that towering metaphysical system, which we know of as the Kabbalah. As the word implies, the teaching of the Kabbalah was transmitted from mouth to ear until about the 12th century, when certain of its teachings were published in book form. These Cabalistic books formed the basis of the great systems of magic which sprung up in the West in the Middle Ages. And in these magical systems, names and words of power played a very great part. As we shall see at a later point, the names of power of the Kabbalah form a very interesting group of magical sound forms. In the folklore of many nations and races, the use of words of power, of charms and spells is to be found. But in the East, there has been built up a massive system of philosophy based upon and constantly checked by a mass of experimental data. I knew that was going to happen. All right. Experimental data. Where you at? Cool. This system is usually referred to as mantra yoga, and its fullest exposition is to be found in the tantric work known as the Garland of Letters. I'm pretty sure Swami Satyananda Saraswati did a rendition of that book. I know I have it. I'm pretty sure it's by Swami Satyananda from the Bihar school. The Christian church, in its pilgrimage through the ages, has accumulated much which has reference to our subject. By the term Christian church is meant not only the more orthodox and respectable streams of its being, the great Catholic churches of the Eastern and Western obediences, together with the various Reformed and non-conforming churches, but also some of the many heretical sects which have hived off from the mainstream of Christian tradition. The Gnostics of the early church formed a group of such sects, and their teachings have, for many centuries, been regarded as heretical and evil. In some of its aspects, the Gnostic teachings certainly justifies such condemnation through modern scholarship has done much to rehabilitate some of the most prominent teachers of the Gnosis. But quite apart from their specific theological views, the Gnostics place very great stress upon the efficacy of names and sounds. By the name, declared some of them, Jesus worked his miracles, a name which he had stolen from the Holy of Holies of the temple. By the mystery of the name, declared another writer, was man's regeneration and deification affected, and in his knowledge of his own true name lay his true peace. Purusha. Society Eject says a whole lot of mantra talk been coming up lately. Yeah, I've noticed that. Coming down to more recent times, we find a floating tradition of a language spoken in paradise, the sound of which gave mastery over nature. Some curious communications received by the Elizabethan occultist and astrologer, Dr. John Dee, there we go, gave fragments of what was called Enochian tongue. So if I just waited, it would have came up anyways. That's funny. And as Casaubon has showed, it was no more gibberish, but possessed grammatical form and syntax. So, like I said, I didn't really study the Enochian stuff, but I do know what it is. And, it's a whole nother alphabet. It's a whole nother language of supposedly communicating with angels are some type of higher intelligence. But it isn't just a bunch of scribbles. Like this, it's a true language in itself. Like you said here, it possesses grammatical form and syntax. Hmm. In the latter part of the 18th century, there arose in Poland. I took the walk to Poland. A curious Kabbalistic sect known as the Chassidim. Some of its members were known as the wonder working rabbis, and these wonder workers made great use of the sacred names. The leader of the Chassidim was Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the master of the divine name. In some of the circles of the Chassidim, the language of paradise was heard, and by its use the rabbis worked wonders and showed signs. The revival of the Western occult tradition through the Order of the Golden Dawn and its offshoot, Stella Matutina, made use of both the Enochian language and the Kabbalistic words of power. And indeed, for the construction and use of the talismanic images, such words are essential. Today, in countless ways, the glamour of the words of power and the magical names still persists for many millions of people. And in the new political groupings which are emerging upon the world stage, we are witnessing the actual birth of such words and names, which will, in the years to come, be charged with magical power over the minds and the hearts of men. Oh, we definitely see that with social media. One of the downsides of this new creation is this whole cancel culture, where you can say certain words of power and have negative consequences come up to you. I took the walk to Poland. I took the walk to Poland. Before we commence to study what we may term the more occult aspects of sound, it is as well to spend some time in considering the subject from the purely physical point of view. We may define it as a series of vibrations set up in matter. These vibrations are not all audible to the human ear, which can only receive within certain fairly definite limits. An empiric test of the range of human audition may be made by trying to hear the high pitched cry of a bat at one end of the scale and the deep note of the diapason pipe of a large organ. It will be found that to many people the bat's cry is inaudible, and many more will confess that they do not hear, but rather they feel the vibration of the diapason pipe. There's another proof of the limited range of human hearing in the curious supersonic whistle, sometimes used as a dog whistle. The sound given out by this whistle is far beyond the range of human perception, but immediately attracts the attention of all dogs within its radius. Sound does not only travel through air, but also is transmitted throughout water, earth, and all material substances, and the contours of the ocean floor and the depths of mineral lodes in the earth have both been investigated by the reflection of sound waves. It is important to remember that although we hear sound by means of specialized sense organs, we are actually bathed in a sea of sound all our lives. The intensity of sound is measured in terms of a standard unit, the decibel, and it has been found that there is what may be described as a danger point in the amount of sound to which human beings may safely be subjected. In actual practice, it is found that the conditions of some of our large industrial cities come very near this danger line, as do also some factory conditions. In studying the occult effects of sound, this must always be remembered. We are apt to limit its effects upon us solely to our auditory consciousness, but a little thought will make us aware that, of course, the sound which strikes upon our eardrums is only a small part of the actual sound vibration. And it is this greater part which is striking both upon one's body and upon the surrounding surfaces. This is, of course, well recognized when we are dealing with acoustics in connection with the sound reflecting properties of public halls, churches, etc., but is liable to be overlooked when dealing with sound from the purely occult point of view. In the latter part of the last century, Miss Watts Dunton Hughes invented a curious little instrument known as the idophone. It was really an adaptation of what are known as Chladni's figures, an experiment in which a violin bow was drawn gently along the edge of a plate of glass covered with fine sand. The vibrations set up by the bow caused the sand to take up definite patterns. The idophone consisted of a cylinder over the open end of which was stretched a rubber diaphragm. Into the side of the cylinder was built a metal trumpet, which served as a concentrator of sound. Upon the rubber diaphragm was sprinkled fine spore dust of the common puffball, lycopodium. When anyone spoke or sang into the instrument, the lycopodium powder formed itself into intricate patterns, and these patterns were constant for any given sound or note. By lowering prepared paper onto the surface of the diaphragm, a permanent record of the sound form could be obtained. But of course, it is obvious that the actual sound vibration is three-dimensional. In recent times, one American Rosicrucian organization has perfected an instrument by means of which such three-dimensional sound forms may be viewed. Speaking of sound forms, look who's back. Some of the sound form patterns are wonderfully intricate, and they show how sound vibrations affect surrounding matter. The long, continued sounding of one particular note tends to set up a sympathetic vibration or resonance in all the surrounding matter. And this sympathetic vibration may have queer effects. It is recorded that on one occasion, when a military band was playing beneath the walls of an old ruin, they played a piece which was apparently based upon the dominant note of the wall, which collapsed upon them. For this reason, soldiers, when marching over a light bridge, are ordered to break step, i.e., to walk out of step and unrhythmically, in order to avoid setting up a vibrational swing in the building structure. In the light of these things, the story of the fall of Jericho as recorded in the Bible may be profitably studied. The converse side of this is to be seen in the stimulating effect upon wearied men of a stirring military march tune, and this brings us to another point. We have so far been studying the effects of sympathetic vibration upon material structures, but its power extends much further. It has tremendous effect upon the mind and the emotion, and not all of this effect is produced in the surface consciousness. So this chapter, when it talked about words of power, the magical use of sound, notice he didn't really focus on any magic words. What he explained and talked about, 1111, thank you, Kevin Wise. Aw, somebody cares. What he talked about here was the fact that sound has an effect on matter. It's vibration that affects matter. And that vibration moves out in 3 dimensions. Usually we see it as like flat shapes, but that's because the medium is flat. In truth, sound is 3-dimensional, and it has a definite effect on what it comes into contact with, your body. But like he said at the end here, also your mind and your emotions and more. We are constantly, 100% of the time from birth to death, bathed in an ocean of sound. Don't forget it. One more won't hurt, right? It's 11:11. MC Maestro says the Doctor Strange fight, right? Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange. In his Shiva form. All right, one more and then we wrap it up. Chapter 9, the words and names in magical working. In the magical workings, it has been found that in order efficiently to use the words and names of power, certain methods must be used. The value of the words and names depends upon 2 things. The first is their own intrinsic power as vibratory forms of energy, right? Vibratory forms of energy by which their correspondence with certain superphysical forms of force can act as the means whereby the forces of the inner planes may affect the physical levels. The other is the psychic charge, which is stored up in the thought forms which are linked with them. All right, so I'm going to read that again. And I want you to keep in mind mantra and everything that we've been talking about as far as mantras concerned, Bij mantras, all the different types of mantra. What's a mantra good for? Why should I be doing mantras? I'm going to read this again, and I want you to think about mantras. In magical workings, it has been found that in order efficiently to use the words and names of power, certain methods must be used. The value of the words and names depends upon 2 things. The value depends upon 2 things. The first is their own intrinsic power as vibratory forms of energy, which by their correspondence with certain superphysical forms of force can act as the means whereby the forces of the inner planes may affect the physical levels. The other is the psychic charge, which is stored up in the thought forms which are linked with them. Those are the 2 things that depend upon the value of the words of power. In considering the first point, we may make it more clear by asking the question, if a gramophone record of a word of power were played in an empty room, would it produce any result? Or is the effect of such a word simply dependent upon the associations in the minds of those who have been conditioned to it, right? So that's the question right there. A word of power, if they played it in an empty room, does it still have an effect? Or is the effect only dependent upon the association in the mind of the person who's been conditioned to it, right? That's the question. Well, check this out. The Swedish seer, Swedenborg, taught that the different planes of the universe were each separate from the other. They were discrete, not continuous. Certain occult teachings at the present day seems to contradict this. But from both the arcane tradition and from personal experience, many believe the Swedenborgian teaching to be correct. But although the planes are separate manifestations, so that, for instance, those on the astral plane cannot normally perceive physical matter, and those on the physical plane cannot normally perceive astral matter, there are 2 definite points of contact between the planes. The first of these is what in the philosophy of the Kabbalah is known as the Mezla, the divine spiritual influence, which is the impelling cause behind the activities of all the manifested universe, and which by its presence binds all the diversities into a unity. And I'll stop right there to give you an occult gem. When you look at the tarot cards and you see the aces, the Ace of Wands, Ace of Cups, Ace of Swords, Ace of Pentacles, this that he just talked about is what those cards represent. The aces of the deck all represent the astral influence of that particular force upon the physical plane. They represent that astral connection, that mesla, right? So think about the aces when I read that sentence again. The first of these, right, wait, go back. There are two definite points of contact between the planes. The first of these is what in philosophy of the Kabbalah is known as the Mezla, the divine spiritual influence, which is the impelling cause behind the activities of all the manifested universe. That's the ace cards. And which by its presence binds all the diversities into a unity. And what Sephirah does the ace card represent? Represents Kether, right? And by which its presence binds all the diversities into a unity. This divine life pervading all things does therefore link all the planes together, and therefore, to that extent, they are continuous. Since the vibration ratios of the words and names have their basis in the ultimate archetypal life, then if they are sounded forth, they will link the planes. Do you get that? Since the vibration ratios of the words and names have their basis in the ultimate archetypal life, then if they are so sounded forth, they will link the planes. This is why these beach mantras are so important. This is why these planetary mantras and these other mantras are so important, because they're not just words that some dude sat around and said, okay, this will be good. That'll be, you can say I'm healthy, wealthy, and wise. No, they raised their consciousness as high as it can go, right? And they realized, I didn't say create, I didn't say discover, they realized, because it was always there, these vibrations that are from the archetypal state of existence. And because it's from the archetype, it touches it's like the stem cell, right? The stem cell, depending on how it develops, it can become any cell for the body. You can use the stem cell to become, you know, bone or ligament or nerves or organs. The stem cells can become anything because they are archetypal cells. Likewise, these archetypal words of power, these beach mantras and other things like that, they come from this archetypal plane. So when they're activated, resonated, and sounded, they connect those higher planes. That's why I was saying earlier, when Kevros SS got asked the question, he asked if these mantras, or if there are certain mantras that can heal trauma. Yes, because when you chant those specific mantras, they put you into alignment with that archetypal reality. And whatever you have going on in your existence that is not in alignment with the archetypal reality, it has to fall away. It has to become neutralized. Okay, so since the vibration ratios of the words and names have their basis in the ultimate archetypal life, then if they are sounded forth, they will link the planes. Apart from this, also, the elemental life wave, which is even now pouring into this universe, constitutes what may be described as the life side of matter. All matter is, in its degree, living matter. All matter. There is no such thing as a dead matter in the material sense of the word. All creation is alive. It is the luminous living garment of the eternal. This again, the Chaldean oracles declare. So our gramophone record, if played in an empty room, will cause certain things to happen. The physical matter of the walls of the room will be set into sympathetic vibration, and its living or etheric aspect will begin to act as a channel of energy between the inner and the outer planes. I'm telling you, it's that etheric plane, it's that etheric aspect which connects the physical and the astral, right? It's the etheric aspect of matter that connects the astral plane to this plane. Without the etheric, these are two separate planes that do not interact with each other. But because of the type of consciousness which is the vital principle of physical matter, is of an extremely simple and primitive type, but because the type of consciousness which is the vital principle of physical matter is of an extremely simple and primitive type, the simple vibration of the word or name will not produce much of a positive nature unless something else, some other factor, is brought into play. This other factor is organized consciousness, and more specifically, concentrated self-consciousness, right? So look, you can play the mantras and it will have an effect, but what has the biggest effect is concentrated self-consciousness. Mind. If the vibration of the word or name is imposed upon someone who has, by the active use of his self-conscious will, attuned himself to the energies of which the word is an expression, then such a one is a true mediator between the planes. And the power of the higher is brought through into the lower by his activities. If now several people work together in the same way, then they form a united link between the planes, a link which is not merely the mathematical sum of their minds, but which is far greater than that. So 2 or 3 gathered together may well transmit more power than 10 or 20 persons who are each working individually. Do y'all remember when Bobby Hemming used to talk about this? It's not numbers. You don't need everybody to wake up. You don't need everybody on the same page. You don't need everybody to suddenly be doing this. No, you just need a handful of people who are doing it correctly. Do y'all remember that? I know somebody remember it. You just need a handful of people doing it right. You don't need everybody. So stop trying to wake everybody up. As Brother Panic used to say, it's not about an economic plan. It's not about we got to save black people or we got to have peace on earth or, we got to do. It's not about none of that, because that will never happen. That will never happen. We're not built for that. However, if the right people with the right mindset, right discipline, right understanding, right self-understanding get together and work together on the same page, look, that's how the world is ruled anyway, right? That's how the world is ruled anyway. All the decisions are made by a small group of people. The whole world is run by a small group of people on the same page. That's how it goes. Just like in your body, you don't need all your cells and organs to be doing the same thing. You just need 10% of your body, which is the brain, to run the rest of the show. Just like in cyclomancy, 10% of what is talked about runs the other 90. But Bobby Hemmett specifically, this is one of his big points. You don't need everybody woke up. You just need a room full of people who understand this information. You just need a room. And that's why these kind of videos are made. Because these kind of videos and these kind of books attract those people. Attract people like you. Right? You who've been on this video for 3 hours, listening intently, right? Taking notes, thinking about how you're going to use this information. That's why this stuff is made. It's not for the masses whatsoever. The masses are the rest of the body parts, the toenail, the elbow, right? The earwax, the lint in the belly button. The rest of the people are the other body parts. Let's continue. If now several people work together in the same way, then they form a united link between the planes, a link which is not merely the mathematical sum of their minds, but which is far greater than that. So 2 or 3 gathered together may well transmit more power. Let me say that again. 2 or 3 gathered together may well transmit more power than 10 or 20 persons who are each working individually. It is for this reason that all the great religions have developed a corporate aspect. In fact, in Christianity, this concept of the corporate nature of the church is an integral part of its philosophy. If, moreover, the word be vibrated by the group, the results will be correspondingly greater than if they are merely being sounded in the presence of such listeners. But this matter of vibrating a name of power is somewhat difficult to explain and even more difficult to teach. It is a psychological trick, somewhat akin to that whereby, quite suddenly, the beginner on the bicycle suddenly finds himself balancing the machine and actually riding. The only way in which the practice of vibrating the names can be indicated is to say that the voice must be made as vibrant as possible. And this is best done by deliberately lowering the key of the voice and at the same time endeavoring to hold in the mind as clearly as possible the idea or group of ideas which are associated with the particular name or word of power. An interesting exercise in this vibration of the names is to vibrate the name in the palm of the hand, or from the solar plexus, or from the forehead. This at first sight seems an absurdity, but with steady practice, the student suddenly finds himself able to locate the vibratory power in the hand or elsewhere. When this has taken place, it becomes easy to extend the practice to any other part of the body. And this can have a very beneficial effect upon the health of that part so vibrated. Now, once again, this is reflective of an exercise in cyclomancy, which of course was taken from Vedic yoga concepts. Now, there are 4 kinds of vibration which we may use for our words of power. They are rhythm, pitch, vowel sounds, and consonantal sounds. The first 2 can be produced on musical instruments, the other 2 by the voice. To induce emotional states, rhythm is the greatest of them all. Let me run that back. To induce emotional states, rhythm is the greatest of them all. Can y'all hear that preacher cadence? But one day, I swear before the Lord, he came to me on a sunny day. Rhythm. That cadence, that tone, it produces what? Emotional states. I mean, like, you had to have wondered as kids, like, why do all these Southern Baptist churches preach like that? Why do all these pastors preach like that? That's your melanin. The key here is, right? It's something to that. It produces an effect in you. This is the utilization of sound. When David Snyder talked about using your voice in terms of hypnosis or trance, he said, imagine that you're bathing the person in an ocean of sound. You're bathing them with sound. You got the pitch, you got the rhythm. That's the musicality aspect of it. And then he says, so you got the vowel sounds and the consonant sounds. MC Maestro says, George Washington apparently avoided the preacher cadence since it would rile up his supporters too much. Fire elementals. Woo. WT. I need beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, lamb, ram, hog, bog, beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, chicken, turkey, girl, you name it. Hey, but check it out. It don't stop in church. This is what rappers do, right? Ain't this what, well, excuse me, effective rappers. This is what rappers do. See, it's not even about the lyrics no more. It's about that cadence. It's about that rhythm. And it gets people riled up. So you're seeing it in example. And you know when you turn on them certain songs and you get with that rhythm, heads start bobbing. Right? You get that stank face when the kick drum hit. Side eject said 808, right? 808. Once we heard that in the mainstream, we never let it go. It didn't go. Once that thing popped out, see, it came early, right? And it was great. That's where that booty shaking music came from. Remember that in I think it was the 90s, right? The booty shaking music was a big thing. That's when the 808s first really popped off. Then it disappeared for a while, and now it's back. See, these sounds, these tones, these rhythms, they literally cause the human body to move. It makes your cells want to move. Even people who can't dance learn how to dance when they hear this kind of music, or when they go to these churches. You see what I'm saying? This is, again, it's mundane, but it is magic, and we experience this. Ashley B says, I think Hitler was said to have a sort of hypnotic quality with his speeches. Absolutely. Absolutely. Honey, beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, lamb, ram, hog, bog, beans, greens, tomatoes, chicken, turkey, gravy. You name it. Deanna Riley, peace. Deanna Riley says, hey Travis, I'm watching one of your other videos right now, but I'm just popping in to say hey. Awesome, awesome. Good to hear from you. Bean, green, tomato, bean, green. Hey, now that's stuck in my head now. Society EJ says they're ready to pass out over dehydration, lol. But they definitely evoke an emotion and don't like the music start playing, it's over. Oh yeah, once the music start playing, right. The praise break. Those can go on for an excruciatingly long amount of time. And Amali says Shakespeare is like a heartbeat, lull people into a dream world. Yeah, that's I don't know if you sent that to me or somebody did, but like the way that Shakespeare wrote the iambic pentameter, it's literally meant to go in accordance with your heartbeat. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. To the point that, like, you know, that's how the other person knew when to jump in for his line to continue that heartbeat cadence throughout the whole play. That's some next level stuff right there, man. That's some next level stuff. Tear the club up. Tear the club up. Hazard Pie says, engaging a child with your voice or soothing with tone. Right, right. Wayne M says, what about when they start running around the church? Hey man, that's what I'm saying. When them vibrations, when that rhythm get into you and start moving around all the cells of your body. Remember in the previous chapter, he talked about those sound waves are three-dimensional. They're 3D. So they're hitting the material, the matter of the body, and causing all types of gyrations. They got no choice but to stand up and start running and kicking and thrashing and flailing. See, now you understand. You can't make fun of them. They can't help it. When the vibrations hit, every cell in their body is doing the Holy Ghost. MC Maestro says Shakespeare was the pseudonym for Francis Bacon, who was John Dee's apprentice. And apparently, shout out to Anna Molly, it appears that Francis Bacon may very well be related, maybe a ancestor of Dion Fortune. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? This rabbit hole goes deep, man. All right, so let's wrap it up here. We got one more page to go. Beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes. Beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes. Beans, greens to beans, greens to beans, 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 beans. Shoot. Anna Molly says more like second cousins, I think. Yeah, man, that's one of them closely guarded secrets that nobody let out. All right, so to induce emotional states, rhythm is the greatest of them all, and this rhythm can be regular or irregular. Syncopation is an example of rhythm and break, which has an enormous value in the evocation of certain emotional states. There are sounds which affect the subconsciousness, even though the conscious mind may not like them at all. They are the mental analogs to the condiments of the dinner table, acting as emotional irritants and stimulants. It is evident, however, that like the condiments, they should only be taken in small doses. That's one of the easiest way to put myself into trance. Like, I start talking to myself in a specific rhythm, and I allow the words to flow in that rhythm indefinitely until I suddenly find myself deep in trance. And while deep in trance, I find that with every breath I take inward, I float deeper inward. And with every breath outward, I sink deeper into the outwardness of my subconscious mind. And you do that for 5 minutes and just focus on the sound of your voice. If you can put yourself into trance and also maintain the intention of that trance, man, you could be unstoppable. Being green, being green. All right, so there are sounds which affect the subconsciousness, even though the conscious mind may not like them at all. Best to take in small doses. There are certain factors in ceremonial magic which make for success. One which has been dealt with elsewhere is incense. The other is chanting. Now, there are chants, many, and in the religious field, one which has always been a very great help in the corporate worship is the so-called Gregorian. Its peculiar barless beat is extraordinarily efficacious in magical work. Now, the ideal magical chant must appeal to the subconsciousness, and part of this subconsciousness is very primitive. Hence, the chant needs reiteration. But the reiteration of the same musical phrase can be very boring to the conscious mind. And for this reason, the chant must be strongly rhythmical, and its reiteration must be made to rise and fall by change of key. Society Eject says, yo, this is wild. I just watched a video about this from the director of Hereditary, talking about all of this, how to evoke different emotions to sound, visuals, and colors. MC Maestro says, my homegirl grew up watching Bad Girls Club. When she's in fight mode, she talks in the cadence of the girls when they fought on the show. Thoroughly trained. We are accustomed in the Western world to music which is constructed round the pitch, commonly known as concert pitch. I believe that's the 432 hertz. And it is to this that the ordinary piano is tuned. But the music of the mantra is half a tone lower, the so-called primitive pitch, and rises and falls in quarter tones. So I'm gonna have to look that up to verify, but maybe you guys have heard online where there's videos of people talking about how our music is in 432 hertz, and it used to be in like 440 or something, and it's the way we have it now is not as beneficial as how it used to be. I'll have to get the numbers right, but I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about here. Veronica Archaga says, I am transitioning just listening to you guys. Data is kicking in. I hope it's the type of transitioning where you're still going to be here for next Thursday, not the other kind of transition. PM Infinity says, Maestro, my roommate's sister watches Bad Girls Club ritualistically, and you are exactly right. Okay, there it is. Kimmy Kin says, used to be 432, changed to 440. Anna says, oh yeah, it's true. That is true. It is different. But he's talking about microtonal music. Their culture has tones between our notes. Yeah, one thing that puts me into trance very quickly is microtonal music. I love microtonal music. That music is, it literally sounds like it's from another dimension. Like, for real, like, if you think this right here sounds like it's from another dimension, no, that stuff sounds like it's really from another dimension. I got a playlist of some songs that just sound so... Matter of fact, there's recently a guy who wrote this Goetia themed song that's in microtonal. I bet if I shared that in the chat right now and you guys listen to that later, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like bizarre, but it's so cool. Yeah, if you want, I'll pull up that playlist. Yeah. While I pull that up, let me continue this chapter here, because we're almost done. To anyone hearing this mantric music for the first time, it usually brings a feeling of exasperation, especially as the full singing voice is not used, but it is a matter of practical experience that the magical chanting, when done at the ordinary pitch and with the ordinary singing voice, is practically ineffective. There it is. I call this playlist The Abyss, because when I hear this kind of music, it makes me feel like I have fallen into a black hole and I am being stretched every direction. Hold on for a sec. I'm going to share it in the chat and you can hear what I'm talking about. Now, you might not like all of these songs. That's okay. But just listen to the first one at least. How do you copy the link? Where's the link at? Open this up in a different window and check it out. We're almost finished with this chat, so it won't be long. Peace, Dimensional Legend. Peace, Al Dickey. Greetings. Welcome, welcome. PM Infinity says, listening to the music from Mahashivatra a couple years ago for the first time sent chills like never before. Anthony Dassan, check him out. Okay. Type that in, then we'll get right back to it. Yeah, so to anyone hearing this mantra music for the first time, it usually brings a feeling of exasperation, especially as the full singing voice is not used. But it is a matter of practical experience that the magical chanting, when done at the ordinary pitch and with the ordinary singing voice, is practically ineffective. Before we leave the subject of words and names of power, there is another aspect of the use of vibrations which we can consider with profit. This is the use of our own personal name for certain occult and magical work. By the personal name, we do not necessarily mean the name which our fond parents bestowed upon us as a result of an endeavor to incorporate as many of the family names as possible in ours, nor yet the name which they took from their favorite novel. One knows how soon, when school days commence, we receive what we call a nickname, and it is this which is the personal name, since it is usually the result of subconscious perception on the part of our fellow pupils, and fits our personality quite well. Sometimes, of course, our baptismal name seems to be found to fit our personality, and we never seem to get a nickname. In this case, the baptismal name is the personal name. The poet Tennyson, in private conversation, used to refer to an experience he had when, repeating aloud his own personal name, he suddenly passed into a curious trance in which he became aware of some greater aspect of himself. He used this experience as the basis for the poem, The Ancient Sage. In this poem, he makes the sage say, "And more than once, my son, as I sat all alone, revolving in myself the word that is the symbol of myself, the mortal limit of the self was loosed and passed into the nameless as a cloud melts into heaven." The sage goes on to say that he found himself with a body of a different order and with a consciousness which far transcended his waking mind. This experience, one type of the so-called astral projection, has been recorded by many occultists, and the use of the personal name for this purpose is definitely taught in certain occult schools. Okay. WBT says, 2 summers ago, you mentioned how important the beach mantras are. I see the difference now that I haven't been on it. Now check it out. That's a good thing, right? That's a great thing, because at first, for me to say, talk about their importance, it's one thing. But when you actually experience it yourself, you know for a fact now. So like I said the other day, it's like a garden, bro. When you have to start over with the mantras, because I had to start over recently, even I fell off for a little bit, but I got back. So the whole thing is you have to start planting those seeds. You start the repetition of those mantras. You get it going. You start a routine. You make sure you're doing your mantras on a regular basis, and you'll start to notice that they begin to blossom and bear fruit and plant seeds. And you keep doing it, and you let that garden fill up. You put some variety in your garden. You might have started off with corn, but now you put in some carrots, some greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, right? Then you start planting some lamb, ram, hog, dog. And what you'll find is you have this vast variety to choose from. And even if you stop and fall off for a little bit, you still got something to eat. And you just pick it up and keep going. So now you know for a fact, with your own experience, that's the best way to go about doing it. It's a connection going on. I'm certain a lot of us kind of fell off for a little bit, and it was probably supposed to happen, right? Even I got the experience of having this wonderful sense of alignment with my cosmic self due to doing all these awesome mantras. And even I literally stopped, just completely stopped. It gradually faded off until I wasn't doing anything. And it wasn't until I started doing them again that I realized the distance that I came from. Because here's the thing, when you're doing these mantras and you're feeling the effects of those vibrations in your bodies, physical body, astral body, mental body, etc., when you're feeling the effects of them, it puts you in a new state, a state that you probably never felt before. And when you gradually fall off like that, the state gradually fades, and you get into a different state of, being a regular mundane person. Now, knowledge-wise, logic-wise, you still remember all the stuff you learned. But what's really curious about this is because you're not in that awesome state, you don't even realize that you fell off. You don't even realize, but there's like this inner sense of like, something's missing. And I know what it is, but I'm gonna pretend like I don't know what it is, because I don't feel like sitting down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do these mantras. But once you finally do get out of that funk and you start doing those mantras again, and you start feeling the effect of those mantras again, you realize, whoa, I didn't even realize that I fell. Because you start waking that state up again and all those memories come back. Because memory is state dependent. And when you unlock that cosmic state again, you'll remember like, whoa, I was already here before. And that alone is encouragement to continue going hard so that you can get all the way back up to where you were. I'm describing my experience. That's how it is. That didn't come from no book. No book tells you that. But my practice told me that. Ain't no thing, man. I think a lot of us fell off, and that's all right. Because we don't stay falling off. We notice it, and we get on back up. All good. WT says exactly. I'm sitting here amongst all I wanted, feeling like something's missing. Right. Because like I said, it's literally like a garden. There's fruit, and you'll still have the fruit in that garden. But if you're not planting the seeds, then of course new fruit isn't growing. So it's like you feel like something missing from the repetition, from the routine. But like I said, it's just like riding a bike or learning how to do anything. You don't forget how to ride a bike. Now, if you jump back on after 30 years, you might have to give it 2 or 3 you might have to give it a try or two to get back to it. But since you've already done it for so long, the muscle memory kicks in, right? The state dependent memory kicks in. Like I mentioned with my band, we didn't play for 20 whole years. But the moment we got in that studio and picked up our instruments and started going, it literally started to come back. We only practiced 2 times, and that was enough to get us back to where we were. I said 20 years of distance. The same thing goes with these mantras. If you were already in there doing it and you fell off, all it takes is for you to get back in there. That's it. So you're fine. You're fine. Absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. All right, so I hope y'all got that link that I posted, that playlist. Just listen to the first song. That's some awesome cosmic music from another dimension. Perhaps you can use something like that to put yourself in an instant state of trance and maybe exercise those visual projection skills. Oh, no, not the projection, the visual reception, the audio reception. Listen to that music. It's going to put you in a completely new state that you never felt before, and allow something to come to mind through your ears. Go ahead and try that. All right. So you can do that. As always, this was an awesome read. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm about to spill the beans. My new course, I'm about to start opening the doors in a week from now. I kind of want to tell y'all what it is, but I've been dropping crazy hints. Somebody did guess it. Stray Panther, I didn't see him in here today, but yeah, we about to get into this thing because I'm telling you, and even he told you too. It is crucial to begin developing your psychic ability if what you want is consistent success, consistent results, right? A lot of people read magic books, a lot of people do magic spells and rituals, but if you're not actively cultivating the psychic ability, you're not going to have these results. And I remembered when I was first doing my Goetia, I was simultaneously cultivating my psychic ability with a certain book called Cyclomancy. And I'm pretty sure that because I was doing that at the same time, I began to have advanced results. Looking back, I see that in the midst of reading and in the midst of practicing, it's been the psychic ability that was able to help me glean information from out the text. It was able to help me glean information out of the rituals. So if you don't have that, you're just going through the motions. The next class is designed to teach you how to develop your psychic ability without a doubt. Do what he said in this book. It'll teach you how to do it without a doubt. You know what to do. The main thing is we don't stay consistent and we don't really give it our best. That's the main thing. All right. So, I hope y'all ready for that. And like I said before, Tuesdays, we got the podcast dropping. Thursdays, we do live stream. Saturdays, we do this book read, The Magician is Training at Work. MC Maestro says, I find chakra shuddhi is essential for reading on any topic. It's a huge boost. Absolutely. Powerful practice right there. Richard Tracy says, 1, correct method, correct guidance, and correct understanding. The psychic symbol. You know what I'm talking about. Or I should say, I know what you're talking about. What's that, chapter 6? Let me see. Not chapter 6, chapter 5. Nope. Chapter 4. Nope. Something completely different. Correct method, correct guidance, and correct understanding. All right, everybody. Time to go. More details on the Cyclomancy class coming soon. All right, I'm out. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you guys.